Close your eyes and breathe deeply. Can you smell it? Burning bones, not wood, bones, cattle and sheep, and whispered rumours of human remains, all aflame on a sacred hill. Can you hear it? Screaming from inside a towering wicker cage as fire consumes the 3 people trapped within, their deaths purchasing our survival through winter. Can you feel it? The presence of the dead pressing close in absolute darkness, cold breath on your neck, invisible hands reaching for warmth they no longer possess. This isn't a story. This is memory. I am 19 winters old, and this is my first true Samhain, the night we call Halloween's ancestor. But there is nothing playful here, nothing sweet or innocent. Only blood and terror and desperate faith that our sacrifices will be enough. Come with me to ancient Ireland, stand in the darkness with me. Watch the Wicker Man burn, and understand that every Halloween tradition you celebrate was forged in this night of horror. Welcome to the Bedside Historian, where we do not merely tell you about the past, we transport you there. Tonight you will not observe history from a safe distance. You will live it. You will smell the smoke, hear the screams, feel the terror. You will stand beside me, Brennan of the Arrain tribe, as I experience my first adult Samhain in ancient Celtic Ireland, 2 centuries before the birth of Christ. This is not legend or fantasy. This is the historical reality of the festival that became Halloween. Every tradition you know, the costumes, the jack-o'-lanterns, the bonfires, the honouring of the dead, was born in blood and bonfire smoke, forged in genuine terror and desperate faith. Extinguish your lights. Settle into darkness, and follow me now into a night when the boundary between the living and dead did not exist, when gods demanded tribute in human screams, and when survival required sacrifices you cannot imagine. Chapter 1. The Dying Light. I stand at the edge of our village as the sun bleeds across the western hills, and I know in my bones that something is wrong. 3 days until Samhain. 3 days until the year dies and is reborn, until the veil between worlds grows so thin it might as well not exist. I am 19 winters old, a man by our tribe's measure, though I feel like a child pretending at manhood, wearing it like an ill-fitting cloak. The harvest is gathered. This should be a time of celebration, of relief that we have survived another year, that our stores are full enough to see us through the hungry months ahead. But there is no celebration in our village, only a tension that sits heavy in the air like the smell before a storm, thick enough to taste on the tongue. The cattle sense it. I watch them now in their pens, restless and lowing, their eyes rolling white with fear though there is no wolf, no predator visible. They press against the wicker fences, trying to escape something they can feel but cannot see. My father says animals know things we have forgotten, that they can sense the thinning of the veil before we can. Looking at them now, wild with inexplicable terror, I believe him. My grandmother emerged from our roundhouse this morning with a face like carved stone. She is ancient, so old that some in the village whisper she might have Druid blood, though none would say it where she could hear. She sees things, knows things. This morning she told my mother that the omens are worse than she has seen in 50 years. The crows began gathering 2 days ago, not the normal flocks that follow the harvest, looking for scattered grain. These are different, hundreds of them, perhaps thousands, perched in the trees at the edge of the forest, silent and watching. They do not caw or fight among themselves. They simply watch our village with eyes like chips of obsidian, and their silence is more unnerving than any amount of noise could be. Yesterday, Fergus the cattleman came to my father with a horror in his eyes that I'd never seen before. One of his best cows had birthed a calf in the night. The calf was dead, stillborn, and it had 2 heads. Fergus wanted to burn it immediately to destroy the evil omen, but my father stopped him. The Druids will want to see it, he said. They will want to read the meaning in its malformation. The milk has been souring, not gradually, not from age or heat, but suddenly. My mother poured fresh milk this morning, and by midday it had curdled in the pail, thick and foul-smelling. She says nothing, but I see the fear in her eyes. Milk does not sour like that without cause, without some corruption in the air itself. I help my father repair the fence around our small plot of land, though the work feels pointless. What are we protecting? What are we preparing for? He works in grim silence, and I know better than to question him when he wears that expression. But I can feel his tension in every movement, see it in the way his eyes keep flickering toward the forest, toward the sacred hill where smoke has been rising for 2 days. The Druids arrived yesterday at dawn. I watched them process through the village, a dozen men in white robes that seemed to glow in the morning mist, walking with a measured pace that spoke of ritual and power. They carried staffs of ash and oak, carved with symbols I do not fully understand, though I have seen them all my life. At their head walked Cathbad, the chief druid, a man so old and terrible that even our chieftain Connell bows before him. They did not stop in the village. They went directly to the sacred compound on the hill, the place we are forbidden to enter except during ceremonies. Since their arrival, smoke has been rising continuously from that direction. Not the grey smoke of cook fires, but something darker, thicker. The smell that drifts down to us on the wind is strange. Herbs I cannot identify, and something else. Something that makes my stomach clench with instinctive revulsion. My father finally breaks his silence as we work. "This will be your first true Samhain," he says, not looking at me, his hands still moving with the practiced efficiency of a man who has built and rebuilt this fence 100 times. "You are a man now. You will stand with the men, see what must be seen, do what must be done." "What must be done?" I ask, though I am not certain I want the answer. He pauses in his work, finally meeting my eyes. His face is weathered by 40 winters, lined by sun and worry and the weight of knowledge he carries. "You will see," he says, "and once you have seen, you can never unsee it. You will understand why we do what we do. Why we must do it." There is something in his voice that chills me more than the autumn wind cutting through my wool tunic. Not just gravity, but something like grief, like the voice of a man preparing to show his son something that will end his innocence forever. "The Druids say this year is different," he continues, returning to his work. "The omens are dark. The veil will be thinner than usual. The dead will walk more freely. The Alsi will be hungry and dangerous." He pauses, and when he speaks again, his voice is barely above a whisper. "They say a great sacrifice will be required." My hand still on the fence post I'm holding. A great sacrifice. I know what that means. Every child in our tribe knows, though we are shielded from the reality until we come of age. Every Samhain, we give offerings to the gods and the spirits. Usually animals, cattle, sheep, sometimes a prized horse. But in dark years, in years when the omens are particularly bad, when the gods demand more, human sacrifice, I say, and the words feel heavy and terrible in my mouth. My father nods, still not looking at me. It has been 5 years since the last time. We had hoped, but the signs are clear. The gods are not satisfied with animal blood this year. They demand more. I want to ask who will be chosen, but the question sticks in my throat. Because it could be anyone. It could be me. The Druids choose according to signs and portents and divine will that we cannot question or understand. To be chosen is an honor, they say. To die for the tribe, to be a messenger to the gods, to ensure the sun returns and winter does not last forever. This is the highest purpose a life can serve. But standing here in the dying light, feeling the wrongness in the air, watching the silent crows and the terrified cattle, all I feel is fear. The sun is setting now, painting the western sky in shades of blood and fire, appropriate perhaps for what is coming. In 3 days that sun will set on Samhain Eve, and we will extinguish every fire in the village. We will sit in absolute darkness, cold and blind, waiting for the Druids to kindle the sacred bonfire on the hill. We will gather around that fire and watch as the chosen are offered to the flames. And I will be there, no longer a child protected from the horror, but a man who must witness and participate in the ancient rituals that have sustained our people since time began. I will see the Wicker man burn with living people inside it. I will hear their screams. I will smell their burning flesh. And I will understand finally the true cost of survival. My grandmother appears in the doorway of our roundhouse, her small form silhouetted against the firelight within. The fire that will be extinguished in 3 days. The fire that represents life itself. She looks at me, and even from this distance I can see the pity in her eyes. She knows what I am about to experience. She has lived through more than 50 Samhains, has witnessed horrors I cannot yet imagine. "Come inside, boy," she calls to me, her voice carrying easily in the still air. "Come eat while the fire still burns. Come sit in warmth and light while you still can." While you still can. The words echo in my mind as I follow my father toward the house. While you still can. As if warmth and light are temporary things. As if the darkness coming is not just the darkness of Samhain night, but something more permanent, something that will settle into my soul and never fully leave. Inside, our roundhouse is warm and smoky, lit by the central hearth fire that has burned continuously since last Samhain. My mother has prepared a meal. Barley porridge, thick with bits of pork, fresh bread, apples from our small orchard. We eat in relative silence, the weight of the coming days pressing down on all of us. My younger sister, Ulni, only 12 winters old, will still be sheltered with the children during the main ceremonies. She does not yet understand why the adults grow so grave as Samhain approaches. She chatters about the carved turnips she's been helping to make, about the stories the old women have been telling. To her, Samhain is still more excitement than terror, still more mystery than horror. I envy her that innocence. In 3 days, I will lose mine forever. My grandmother sits by the fire, staring into the flames as if reading secrets written there. Finally she speaks, her voice soft but clear in the quiet house. "The veil is already thinning," she says. "I can feel them pressing close. The dead are restless this year, hungry." "Will they come for us?" Ain asks, her voice suddenly small and frightened. "They come every Samhain," my grandmother replies. "But this year they are angry. Something is wrong in the other world. The balance has been disturbed. That is why the sacrifice must be so great. That is why the Druids are so grave." "What disturbed the balance?" I ask. She finally looks away from the fire, her ancient eyes meeting mine. "I do not know, but I feel it, like a wound in the world itself. Something is coming, Brennan. Something worse than we have faced before. And all we can do is perform the rituals, make the offerings, and pray that it is enough." The fire crackles and pops, sending sparks up through the smoke hole in the roof. I watch the sparks rise and disappear into the darkening sky, and I think about how soon that fire will be extinguished. How soon we will sit in absolute darkness, vulnerable and exposed, waiting for dawn and hoping we survive to see it. Outside, I hear the crows beginning to settle into the trees for the night. Their rustling sounds like whispered conversations in a language I do not speak. The cattle have finally quieted, though I imagine they are still restless in their pens, still feeling the approach of something terrible. 3 days until Samhain. 3 days until I stand on that sacred hill and witness the truth of what we are, what we have always been. A people balanced on the knife edge between light and dark, life and death, civilization, and the wild chaos that presses against our fragile boundaries. 3 days until the Wicker Man burns, and I learn whether my faith is strong enough to watch people die screaming and call it sacred. I finish my meal and excuse myself, stepping out into the night. The temperature has dropped sharply, and my breath mists in the air. The stars are beginning to appear, cold and distant and indifferent to human suffering. I walk to the edge of the village, to the place where our cleared land meets the forest. In the darkness between the trees, I sense movement. Shapes that might be deer or might be something else. Eyes that reflect starlight in colours that are not quite right. The forest has always been a place of power and danger, home to things we do not fully understand. But on Samhain, those things come out. They walk among us, and we must face them with nothing but our rituals and our faith to protect us. I stand there in the cold darkness, listening to the night sounds, feeling the wrongness in the air, and I understand that my childhood has ended. Whether I am ready or not, whether I am strong enough or not, I will face what is coming. I will stand with the men of my tribe. I will witness the sacrifice. I will commune with the dead, and if I survive, if we all survive, I will carry the memory of it for the rest of my life, understanding finally what it means to live in a world where the boundary between life and death is not fixed, but permeable, where certain nights belong not to the living, but to forces older and darker than we can comprehend. The dying light has become full darkness now. Samhain is coming. The dead are gathering, and I am no longer a child who can be sheltered from the truth. I am Brennan of the Erin tribe, and I will live through Halloween's bloody birth, if the gods permit, if the sacrifice is sufficient, if the darkness does not consume us all. Chapter 2. The Druids' Proclamation. Dawn breaks cold and grey, and I have barely slept. My dreams were troubled, full of fire and screaming and faces I could not quite see, reaching for me from shadows that moved with malevolent purpose. When my mother shakes me awake, I am almost grateful, though the exhaustion sits heavy in my bones. The Druids have called a gathering, she says, her voice tight with tension, in the sacred grove. Everyone must attend. I dress quickly in the dim light of our newly kindled fire. My father rose before dawn to restart it from coals carefully banked the night before. In 2 more days, we will not have that luxury. In 2 more days, every fire will be extinguished, and we will sit in cold darkness until the bonfire is lit. The entire village is stirring, hundreds of people emerging from their roundhouses, pulling on cloaks against the autumn chill, speaking in hushed voices that carry the weight of dread. Children cling to their mothers' skirts. Old men lean on staffs, their faces grave. Even the dogs sense the wrongness. They follow silently at heel rather than running ahead as they usually would, their tails low, their ears flattened. We process through the village toward the sacred grove, a walk of perhaps half a mile. The path is well worn, we have walked it countless times for ceremonies and rituals. But today it feels different, as if the very earth beneath our feet has changed, become unstable and treacherous. The sacred grove lies in a clearing surrounded by ancient oaks, trees that were old when my grandmother's grandmother was young, trees that have witnessed centuries of ritual and sacrifice. Their branches form a canopy overhead, bare now with autumn but still imposing, still speaking of power and permanence. The ground beneath them is carpeted with fallen leaves that crunch under our feet, releasing the smell of decay and earth. As we enter the grove, I notice the stones first. They ring the clearing, standing stones twice the height of a man, covered in carvings that predate memory. Spirals and circles and strange symbols that the Druids say represent the cycle of seasons, the wheel of life and death, the eternal return. I have seen these stones all my life, but today they seem different, more ominous, as if they are not merely markers but watchers, silent witnesses to what is about to unfold. The Druids are already present, standing in a semicircle at the grove's centre. There are 12 of them, all men, all dressed in white robes that seem to absorb the grey morning light. They wear torques of gold around their necks, symbols of their rank and power. Their faces are solemn, painted with woad in patterns that make them look inhuman, like spirits wearing human skin. At their centre stands Cathbad, the chief druid. He is ancient. How ancient, no one knows. Some say he has lived for 3 generations of men, sustained by sacred knowledge and communion with the gods. His beard reaches his waist, white as snow, braided with small bones and pieces of amber. His eyes are the colour of winter ice, and when they sweep across the gathered crowd, I feel their weight like physical pressure. We arrange ourselves in concentric circles around the Druids, men in the inner rings, women behind them, children at the back. I stand with my father and the other men of our clan, trying to project courage I do not feel. Around me, I can smell the fierce sweat of my neighbours, can hear the nervous shuffling of feet. The murmured prayers to gods whose names are older than language. The sacred grove falls silent as Cathbad raises his staff. The silence is profound. Even the wind seems to have stopped. Even the birds have ceased their morning songs. In that silence I can hear my own heartbeat, loud and rapid in my chest. When Cathbad speaks, his voice carries a power that seems to come from the earth itself, resonating in my bones, in my teeth. It is not merely the voice of one old man, but something more. The voice of authority built on centuries of tradition. The voice of one who stands between the mortal world and the realm of gods and spirits. People of the Aren, he begins, and though he does not shout, everyone can hear him clearly. We gather in this sacred place to speak of Samhain, of the great turning, of the night when the year dies and is reborn. I feel the tension in the crowd increase. Everyone knows why we are here, but hearing it spoken aloud makes it real in a way that fear and speculation cannot. The veil between worlds grows thin, Cathbad continues. At Samhain, that veil dissolves completely. the boundary that separates our world from the other world, that keeps the living separate from the dead, that protects us from the Owl Sea and the ancient powers, that boundary will cease to exist for one night. He pauses, letting the words sink in. I can hear people around me breathing shallowly, can feel the collective fear like a living thing pressing against my skin. On Samhain night, the dead will walk, he says, and his voice carries a certainty that chills me. Your ancestors will return, seeking the warmth and light they have lost. They will hunger for food, for mead, for the life they no longer possess. If we honour them properly, if we give them offerings and welcome them to our hearths, they may pass peacefully back into the other world when dawn comes. But, and his voice drops lower, becomes darker, there are other things that walk on Samhain. Not just the honoured dead, but malevolent spirits. The Owl Sea will roam freely, the fairy folk who do not love humanity, who take pleasure in our suffering, who will steal our children and our sanity if given the chance. The Puka will shapeshift and hunt. The Dullahan will ride, and those who see him will know death is coming. The bean cedar will wail outside the homes of those marked for death. Around me I hear murmured prayers, protective charms being whispered. My father's hand finds my shoulder, grips it tightly. Whether for my comfort or his own, I cannot tell. These things have always walked on Samhain, Cathbad says. This is the nature of the festival, the price of living in a world where the boundaries between life and death, between order and chaos, between the tamed land and the wild otherworld, must be maintained through constant vigilance and ritual. He raises his staff higher, and I see that it is carved with spirals that seem to move in the grey light, that seem to pull at my eyes and my mind in ways that are not entirely comfortable. But this year, he says, and his voice carries a weight that makes my stomach clench. This year is different. The silence that follows is absolute. Even the sound of breathing seems to have stopped. The omens are dark, Cathbad continues. Darker than any I have seen in my long years of service to the gods. The signs speak of disturbance in the other world, of anger among the powers that dwell there, of a balance thrown terribly askew, the stillborn calf with two heads, the crows gathering in unnatural numbers, the milk souring in the pail, the cattle's terror, the dreams that have plagued many of you, dreams of fire and drowning and suffocation. He sweeps his gaze across the crowd, and when those ice-coloured eyes pass over me, I feel naked, exposed, as if he can see every secret fear I carry. The gods are not pleased, he says. The covenant between our people and the powers that sustain us has been strained. I do not know why. Such knowledge is hidden even from those of us who walk closest to the divine. But I know this. If we do not perform the proper rituals, if we do not make sufficient offerings, if we do not honour the gods and spirits with appropriate sacrifice, then the sun may not return. Winter may last forever. Our crops will fail. Our cattle will die. Our people will perish in the cold and dark. The weight of these words settles over the crowd like a physical burden. This is not metaphor or religious poetry. This is the literal belief of our people, that the sun's return is not guaranteed, that without proper ritual and sacrifice, the natural order itself might collapse. Every Samhain, we make offerings, Cathbad says. Every year, we sacrifice to ensure balance, to pay the price that the gods demand for allowing us to live, to grow crops, to raise cattle, to have children who survive to adulthood. Usually animal sacrifice is sufficient. A white bull, a black sheep, roosters and hens whose blood purchases another year of life. He pauses, and in that pause I know what is coming. Everyone knows what is coming. But knowing does not make it easier to hear. This year, animal blood is not enough, he says, and though his voice remains level, I hear something like regret beneath the words. The gods demand human sacrifice. 3 souls to serve as messengers, to carry our prayers directly to the divine, to pay in human blood the price of the world's continuation. A collective intake of breath ripples through the crowd. Though we all knew this was coming, though rumours have been circulating for days, hearing it spoken aloud by the chief druid makes it terribly, finally real. The sacrifice will take place on Samhain night, Cathbad continues. On the sacred hill, by the light of the bonfire, we will offer 3 chosen souls to the gods. They will be placed within the Wicker man, and they will burn as an offering, as a prayer made manifest in flame and smoke and human screaming that carries to the heavens and the other world and all the places where powers greater than us dwell. My stomach turns. The Wicker Man. I have heard whispers of it. Everyone has. A massive cage woven from willow withes in the shape of a man, tall as 3 men standing on each other's shoulders, hollow inside, large enough to hold living people who will burn as the structure is set aflame. "Who will be chosen?" a voice calls from the crowd. I cannot see who spoke, but the question hangs in the air, echoing what everyone is thinking. Cathbad's expression does not change. "The gods will choose," he says, "through signs and portents, through sacred divination, through methods that have been used since time immemorial. We will read the Ogham sticks, we will examine entrails, we will interpret dreams and visions, and the gods will make their will known." "When?" another voice asks. "Today," Cathbad replies. "Before sunset, the chosen will be marked and taken to the sacred compound, where they will be prepared for their honour. For make no mistake, to be chosen is a great honour. To die for the tribe, to serve as messenger to the gods, to ensure through your death that hundreds will live. This is the highest purpose a life can achieve. The chosen will be remembered. Their names will be spoken at every Samhain for generations. Their sacrifice will sustain us." Around me, I feel people shrinking into themselves, as if making themselves smaller might make them less likely to be chosen. My father's grip on my shoulder tightens. Is he worried for me? Or is he worried for himself? Either of us could be chosen. Any of us could be chosen. "There are other preparations to be made," Cathbad continues. "You will ready your homes for the return of the dead. You will carve the turnips to light the way for friendly spirits and repel malevolent ones. You will prepare food offerings, your best meat, your finest mead, fresh bread that the dead may remember the taste of life. You will clean your homes completely, sweeping away all old rushes, making space for the honoured dead to enter." He pauses, scanning the crowd one final time. "Tomorrow at dusk the fires will be extinguished. Every fire in every home, every torch, every candle. We will sit in darkness and cold as the dead sit in their graves, that we might understand their hunger for warmth and light. And on Samhain night we will gather on the sacred hill for the kindling of the bonfire, for the offerings, for communion with the dead, and for the great sacrifice that will ensure our survival. Go now," he commands. "Prepare your homes, prepare your hearts, and know that whatever comes, whatever must be done, we do it for the tribe, for our children, for the continuation of life itself. The gods demand much, but they give much in return. The sun will rise, the seasons will turn, life will go on, but only if we pay the price they demand." With that he lowers his staff and the gathering begins to disperse. But we do not leave quickly or easily. We move slowly, reluctantly, speaking in hushed voices, glancing back at the Druids who remain in the grove, already beginning their preparations for the selection ceremony. As we walk back to the village, my father finally speaks. "Whatever happens," he says quietly, "remember that it is necessary. Remember that the alternative is worse. Death for 3 or death for all." I nod, but the words ring hollow. How can I accept that the gods require human screaming to be satisfied? How can I call it honour to burn alive? Yet I have been raised in this belief, have seen the evidence of divine power and otherworldly threat my entire life. What choice do we have but to believe, but to obey, but to pay the price demanded? By the time we reach our roundhouse, the sun is higher in the sky, but the day seems no brighter. The grey light matches the grey feeling in my soul. Not quite darkness, but not light either. Something suspended between, something liminal and uncertain. My grandmother is waiting at the door, her ancient face unreadable. She looks at me and nods slowly, as if confirming something she already knew. "It begins," she says simply. "The choosing, the sacrifice, the opening of the veil. May the gods have mercy on us all." But I wonder, as I enter the dim interior of our home, whether the gods are the kind to show mercy, or whether mercy is a human concept that has no place in the ancient bargains we have made with powers that predated us and will outlast us, powers that hunger for blood and fire and human suffering offered up as prayer. Today, 3 will be chosen, tomorrow the fires will die, and in 2 days I will stand on that hill and watch the Wicker Man burn, and I will understand finally what it means to live in a world where survival demands sacrifice, where faith requires horror, and where Halloween's cheerful masks hide the memory of screaming that echoes across 2,000 years. Chapter 3. marking the chosen. The afternoon sun hangs low in the sky, pale and weak, offering little warmth. I help my mother prepare turnips for carving, but my hands shake so badly that I nearly slice my thumb open. She takes the knife from me gently, says nothing about my fear. Everyone is afraid today. Fear hangs over the village like the smoke from our hearth fires, visible, tangible, impossible to escape. Word has spread that the selection ceremony will begin at the sacred grove when the sun touches the western hills. Until then, we wait. The waiting is perhaps worse than what is to come. At least when it happens, when the chosen are marked, the terrible uncertainty will end. But this waiting, this not knowing, stretches each moment into an eternity of dread. My father has gone to check on our cattle, though I suspect he simply needs to be away from the house, away from the oppressive atmosphere of waiting. My sister Aine sits by the fire, unusually quiet, clutching a rag doll my mother made for her last winter. Even at 12, she understands enough to be frightened. My grandmother works steadily on her turnip carving, her ancient hands surprisingly steady as she hollows out the flesh, cuts the grotesque face that will house a candle. I have seen this 47 times, she says without looking up. 47 Samhains, and still the waiting never becomes easier. How many times have you seen human sacrifice, I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. She pauses in her work, her knife still against the pale flesh of the turnip. 7 times, she says quietly. 7 times in 47 years. It is not common, but neither is it rare. When the omens are dark, when the balance is disturbed, the gods demand more than animal blood. This is the way of things. This is how we survive. Does it get easier to watch? She finally looks at me, and in her ancient eyes I see something like pity mixed with a harder knowledge. No, she says simply. It never becomes easier, but you learn to bear it. You learn to carry the weight of what you have witnessed, and you learn why it must be done. Before I can respond, we hear the sound, a horn blown 3 times from the direction of the sacred grove, the signal the selection is beginning. Everyone in the village emerges from their homes simultaneously, as if pulled by invisible strings. We converge on the path to the sacred grove, moving in near silence. Children who would normally be running and playing walk solemnly beside their parents. Old men who can barely walk are supported by younger relatives, determined not to miss this, determined to witness what must be witnessed. The walk to the grove feels both too long and too short. I want to turn back, to run, to hide in our home like a child hiding from thunder. But I am a man now, and men do not hide from their duties, no matter how terrible those duties may be. When we reach the grove, the Druids have transformed it. The standing stones are now draped with garlands of sacred herbs, vervain and mistletoe and plants I cannot identify. The ground has been swept clear of leaves, revealing patterns drawn in white chalk, spirals and circles and symbols of power. And at the centre of the grove stands something I have never seen before, something that makes my breath catch in my throat, the Wicker Man. It towers above us, easily 20 feet tall, woven from willow withies into the rough shape of a human figure. Its arms are raised, as if in supplication or surrender. Its body is hollow. I can see through the gaps in the weaving to the empty space within. Empty for now. In 2 days, that space will be filled with living people, and the entire structure will be set ablaze. Looking at it, I feel my stomach revolt. This is not symbolic. This is not metaphor. This is an actual cage designed to hold people while they burn to death. The horror of it is so profound that my mind almost refuses to process it. But I force myself to look, force myself to understand, because this is the reality of our world. This is what we do. This is the price of survival. The Druids arrange themselves around the Wicker Man, and Cathbad steps forward, carrying items for the selection ceremony. I see ogham sticks, thin pieces of wood carved with the ancient alphabet used for divination. I see a bronze bowl polished to a mirror shine. I see a black ram, its legs bound, lying on a stone altar. The crowd forms a large circle around the Druids and the Wicker Man. We stand shoulder to shoulder, packed tight, as if proximity to each other might offer protection. I find myself between my father and Finn, a young warrior I have known since childhood. Both of them are pale, their faces set in expressions of forced calm. Cathbad raises his arms, and silence falls so completely that I can hear the wind rustling through the bare oak branches above us. "The gods will choose," he intones, "through signs that have been given since time immemorial, through methods tested and proven across countless generations, we will divine who among us is called to this sacred duty." He nods to another druid, who approaches the black ram on the altar. The animal's eyes roll white with terror. It knows what is coming, the same way the cattle knew something was wrong. The druid draws a bronze knife and with practiced efficiency cuts the ram's throat. Blood pours into the bronze bowl beneath its head, steaming in the cold air. When the ram has bled out, twitching its last, the druid cuts open its belly. I look away, but I can hear the wet sounds as he extracts the entrails. This is haruspicy, reading the future in the organs of sacrificed animals. The druids have been doing this for as long as our people have existed. Cathbad bends over the entrails, examining them with intense concentration. The other druids lean in as well, speaking in low voices, pointing at various aspects of the organs. The crowd waits in terrible silence. Finally, Cathbad straightens. His face is grave. "The signs are clear," he announces. 3 souls are required. The liver shows 3 dark spots. The intestines coil into 3 distinct sections. 3 souls to balance 3 disturbances in the other world. 3 offerings to restore the broken covenant. He turns to the ogham sticks, casting them onto a white cloth spread on the ground. They fall in a pattern I cannot interpret, but the druids study them intently, discussing in their ancient language that sounds like wind through stones. "Age and youth," Cathbad finally says. "The old and the young and the violated. These are what the sticks reveal. One who has lived long, one who has barely lived, and one who has broken sacred law." My mind races. Old and young and violated. The categories are broad enough to include many people, narrow enough to exclude many others. I'm neither very old nor very young. At 19, I am in the prime of life, and I have broken no sacred laws that I know of. But the relief I feel is immediately followed by guilt and shame. Someone I know will be chosen, someone's father, someone's child, someone's friend. The druids begin to move through the crowd, and I realize this is the next phase of selection. They will narrow the possibilities through direct examination. Cathbad leads them, his ice blue eyes scanning faces, his presence somehow both commanding and terrifying. They stop first before old Gareth, a man of perhaps 60 winters, who has been growing increasingly frail over the past year. He can no longer work in the fields, can barely walk without assistance. He has been a burden on his family, though no one speaks of it openly. Cathbad places his hand on Gareth's forehead, closes his eyes as if listening to something only he can hear. After a long moment, he opens his eyes and nods. A younger druid steps forward with a clay pot containing ash from sacred fires. He dips his finger in the ash and marks Gareth's forehead with a symbol, a spiral dark against his weathered skin. Gareth's face goes white, his legs buckle, and his sons catch him before he falls. Around us, I hear gasps, murmured prayers, the sound of someone weeping quietly. The first has been chosen. The druids move on, scanning the crowd. They pause before several children, examining them, but each time they move on without marking. Then they stop before a girl of perhaps 10 winters. Ciara, daughter of the smith. She's small for her age, born premature and always sickly. She has the wasting disease that has slowly stolen her strength over the past year. Cathbad kneels before her, looking into her eyes. She stares back at him, tears streaming down her face, but she does not look away. There is something almost defiant in her gaze, as if she has already accepted her fate and refuses to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. "This one," Cathbad says quietly, and the mark is placed upon her forehead. Her mother screams, a raw animal sound of grief that tears through the silence. She tries to rush forward, but the men around her hold her back. Nothing can be done. The druids have chosen. The gods have spoken through them. 2 chosen, 1 remains. The druids continue their circuit of the crowd, and now they seem to be looking for something specific. Someone who has broken sacred law. My mind races through recent events, trying to think who this might be. Has someone stolen, committed adultery, violated a taboo? They stop before Fiachra, a warrior of perhaps 25 winters. He is strong, capable, a valuable member of the tribe. But I remember now, 2 months ago, he was involved in a drunken fight at a feast. He killed another warrior, Declan, over an insult or a woman or some petty matter that seemed important in the moment. It was judged an accident, a result of too much mead and hot tempers. Compensation was paid to Declan's family. The matter was considered settled. But killing another member of the tribe, even accidentally, is a violation of sacred law. Blood spilled within the tribe rather than against enemies creates imbalance, creates debt that must be paid. Cathbad stands before Fiachra, and the young warrior's face is a mask of rage and terror combined. He knows why they have stopped before him. He knows what is coming. "No," Fiachra says, his voice low and dangerous. "No, I paid the blood price. The matter is settled." "The blood price satisfied Declan's family," Cathbad replies calmly. "But it did not satisfy the gods. You spilled sacred blood. You created imbalance. Now you will restore it." "I will not," Fiachra says, and his hand moves to the knife at his belt. Instantly, 6 Druids are upon him, moving with a speed that seems impossible for their age. They pin his arms, force him to the ground. He struggles, cursing, screaming that this is unjust, that he has done nothing to deserve this. But justice is not the point. Balance is the point. The god's hunger is the point. The mark is placed on his forehead while he writhes beneath the Druid's grip. 3 spirals of ash on 3 foreheads. 3 souls chosen for the Wicker man. 3 deaths to purchase the tribe's survival. "It is done," Cathbad announces. "The gods have chosen. Old Gareth, who has lived his full measure of years and now gives his death to ensure that others may age as he has. Young Ciara, whose suffering in life will end, whose brief flame will burn bright in service to the tribe, and Fiachra, whose violation of sacred law will be balanced by his sacrifice." The chosen 3 are separated from the crowd. Gareth moves willingly, his face holding a strange calm, as if he has accepted his fate with resignation, or perhaps even relief. Ciara walks between 2 Druids, silent now, her tears drying on her cheeks. Fiachra must be dragged, still struggling, still cursing, his pride and rage refusing to accept what cannot be changed. They are taken toward the sacred compound on the hill, where they will be kept under guard until Samhain night. They will be fed, given whatever comfort can be provided. The Druids say they will be prepared spiritually, taught what to expect, given prayers to carry with them into death. But none of that changes the fundamental horror. In 2 days they will be placed inside that towering wicker structure, and they will burn alive while the tribe watches. As they disappear up the path, Ciara's mother collapses, surrounded by women trying to comfort her. Gareth's sons stand in stunned silence. Fiachra's wife runs after him, screaming his name until hands pull her back. The Wicker man stands at the center of the grove, empty but not for long. In 2 days it will be filled. In 2 days it will burn. In 2 days I will watch 3 people die in the most horrible way imaginable, and I will call it sacred because that is what we do. That is what we have always done. "It is finished," Cathbad says to the assembled crowd. "Go to your homes, prepare yourselves. Tomorrow the fires will be extinguished. Tomorrow we enter darkness, and on Samhain the veil will fall, the dead will walk, and the sacrifice will be made." We disperse slowly, moving like people in shock, speaking in hushed voices or not at all. My father's hand finds my shoulder again, but he says nothing. What is there to say? We have witnessed the choosing. We know who will die, and we must accept it because the alternative, the sun not returning, winter lasting forever, all of us dying, is supposedly worse. As we walk back to the village, I see the carved turnips sitting outside homes, their grotesque faces ready to be lit with candles. I see children being hurried inside by parents who want to shelter them from conversations about death and sacrifice. I see old people standing in doorways, their faces reflecting memories of past Samhains, past sacrifices, past horrors that they have learned to live with because there is no other choice. My grandmother is waiting at our door. She looks at my face and knows without asking that the choosing is done. "Who?" she asks simply. "Old Gareth, young Ciara, Fiachra the warrior, I reply, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. She nods slowly. The pattern is as it has always been. The old who have completed their time, the young who carry the tribe's hope, the transgressor who must balance his crime. 3 deaths, 3 doorways, 3 offerings. How can you be so calm, I ask, and I hear anger in my voice, though I know it is unfair to direct it at her. I am not calm, she says quietly. I am old. There is a difference. I've seen this before. I will see it again if I live to the next dark Samhain, and then perhaps it will be my turn. And I will walk into the Wicker Man with whatever courage or despair I can muster. This is the world we live in, Brennan. This is the bargain our ancestors made. We can accept it, or we can refuse it, and watch everything we love be destroyed. That night I cannot eat. The food my mother prepares sits heavy in my stomach, threatening to come back up. I sit by the fire, staring into the flames, thinking about how in one more day this fire will be extinguished, how we will sit in darkness waiting, and how on the second night we will watch 3 people burn. My father sits beside me, and for a long time we are silent. Finally he speaks. When I was your age, I saw my first human sacrifice, a woman who had murdered her infant child in madness. She went into the Wicker Man, screaming curses on all of us, on the gods, on the Druids. Her screams, I can still hear them sometimes, in dreams. Does it help? I ask, knowing that. No, he admits, but perhaps it helps to know that you're not alone in your horror, that every man who has stood where you will stand has felt what you feel, and that we carry on because we must, because our children depend on us, because the alternative is unthinkable. I nod, but I'm not comforted. I think of Kiara, only 10 years old, who in 2 days will die screaming. I think of Gareth, who deserved to die peacefully in his sleep surrounded by family. I think of Fiachra, whose drunken mistake will cost him everything. And I think of myself, standing on that hill watching the Wicker Man burn, becoming the kind of man who can witness such horror and call it holy. I wonder if, after Samhain, I will still recognize myself. Or if something essential in me will have died along with the 3 in the flames, leaving behind only a hollow shell that goes through the motions of living because that is what we do. Outside, the crows have begun their evening settling. They're rustling louder than usual, as if they are excited by what is to come. The cattle low nervously in their pens, and somewhere on the sacred hill, in the compound where the chosen are kept, 3 people sit in darkness, knowing they have 2 more days to live, 2 more days before the Wicker Man claims them. Tomorrow the fires will die. Tomorrow we enter the darkness, and the day after, Halloween's bloody birth will be complete, baptized in screaming and smoke and the terrible faith of a people who believe their survival depends on sacrifice, who believe the sun returns only because we pay the price the gods demand. I am 19 years old, and I am learning what it means to be a man in a world where gods are hungry, and mercy is a luxury we cannot afford. The Chapter 4. Preparing the dead dawn breaks on the day before Samhain, and with it comes a frantic energy that contrasts sharply with yesterday's grief and shock. Today, we prepare. Today, we ready our homes and ourselves for the night when the veil falls and the dead return. There is no time for dwelling on what we witnessed yesterday. No time for processing the horror of knowing 3 people we have lived alongside will die tomorrow. There is only work, endless, necessary work. My mother wakes me before first light. We must clean the house completely, she says, pressing a broom into my hands. Every corner, every surface. The dead must find our home welcoming, or they may grow angry. I begin sweeping, pushing out the old rushes that cover our earthen floor. They are dry and crackling, mixed with dirt and crumbs and all the detritus of daily living. As I work, I try not to think about who might cross our threshold tomorrow night. My grandfather, dead 3 winters ago, his lungs failing in the deep cold of January. My infant sister, who lived only 3 days, whom I barely remember but whose loss still casts a shadow over my mother's face when she thinks no one is watching. My uncle Brennan, for whom I was named, killed in a cattle raid 5 years ago, his head split by an axe. Will they really return? Will they really walk through our door, looking for food and warmth? Or is all of this merely ritual, comforting actions we perform to give structure to our fear? But even as I question, I remember the stories my grandmother has told. The year she saw her dead mother sitting by the fire, visible as life, reaching withered hands toward the flames. The Samhain when her sister's friend was found dead in the morning, his face frozen in an expression of pure terror, having seen something in the night that stopped his heart. The year when food left out for the dead was gone by morning, though the house had been sealed tight and no living person could have entered. These are not just stories. They are the lived experiences of people I trust, people who do not lie or exaggerate. Whatever walks on Samhain night is real enough to terrify, real enough to kill, real enough that we prepare our homes with desperate thoroughness. My mother and grandmother are washing every surface with water mixed with sacred herbs, vervain gathered at midsummer, dried heather from the high moors, yarrow that grows at the boundaries between our tamed fields and the wild forest. The smell is sharp and clean, cutting through the usual smells of smoke and cooking and human habitation. The dead are attracted to decay, my grandmother explains as she works. They hunger for life, and decay reminds them of what they have lost. We must present them with cleanliness, with order, with the appearance of vitality. We must remind them that this is the realm of the living, and while we welcome them as honoured guests, this is not their place. They must return to the other world when dawn comes. My sister Aine is tasked with preparing the food offerings. She works carefully, selecting the best portions of our stored meat, the finest bread my mother baked this morning, apples from our small orchard chosen for their lack of blemish. These will be placed outside our door at nightfall tomorrow, offerings to the returning dead. What if they want more? Aine asks, her voice small. What if what we offer is not enough? Then we will give more, my mother says firmly. Whatever they ask, within reason, we give. To refuse the dead is to invite their wrath. Better to go hungry ourselves than to anger those who walk on Samhain night. By midday, the house is as clean as I have ever seen it. The old rushes have been replaced with fresh ones, strewn with dried herbs that release their scent when stepped upon. Every surface has been washed. Our few possessions have been straightened and arranged. The hearth has been swept of ashes, the fire banked to burn cleanly. Now comes the work I've been both dreading and anticipating, carving the turnips. My father brings out a dozen large turnips, their pale flesh gleaming in the afternoon light. We sit outside in a circle. My father, myself, Finn from next door, and several other young men of the village. The older men have already carved theirs, their experience making the work quick and efficient. But for many of us, this is our first year doing this as adults, our first year creating the sacred protective images that will guard our homes. The faces must be fearsome, my father instructs as he begins his first turnip. Not comical, not merely strange. They must be horrible enough to frighten away malevolent spirits, twisted enough that harmful entities will see them and think that this home is already claimed by something powerful. I watch as he works, his knife moving with practiced skill. He hollows out the turnip first, scooping out the flesh and leaving a hollow shell. Then he begins carving the face, a grotesque visage with empty staring eyes, a gaping mouth full of jagged teeth, features twisted in an expression of malevolent hunger. I begin my own turnip, my hands less steady, my cuts less clean. But as I work, something strange happens. The face that emerges under my knife is not entirely of my conscious creation. It is as if my hands know what to carve, as if some ancestral memory guides them. The eyes I create are hollow and haunted. The mouth a rictus of silent screaming, the entire face suggesting something caught between life and death, something that has seen horrors beyond imagining. When I finish, I hold it up, and I'm disturbed by what I've created. It is genuinely horrible, the kind of image that would haunt a child's nightmares. But that is the point, my father assures me. Tomorrow night, when candles are lit inside these carved turnips, their grotesque faces will glow with inner light, becoming beacons for friendly spirits and warnings to harmful ones. They are not just decorations, my father explains as we work. They are tools. Each carved face is a watcher, a guardian. When the dead walk and the spirits roam, these faces will stand sentinel, protecting our homes from those things that wish us harm. As the afternoon wears on, I finish 6 turnips. Each one different, each one horrible in its own way. Some have multiple eyes, suggesting something that sees too much. Others have mouths that seem capable of swallowing souls. One has no features at all, just a smooth, blank face that is somehow more disturbing than the grotesque ones, suggesting an entity so alien that human features are meaningless to it. While we work, my grandmother sits nearby telling stories. This is part of the preparation too, the passing down of knowledge, the transmission of collective memory about Samhain and what it means. When I was a girl, she says, her voice taking on the rhythmic quality of a practiced storyteller, my own grandmother told me of the year when the puka came to our village. It was Samhain night and the bonfire was burning on the hill. A black horse appeared at the edge of the firelight, the largest horse anyone had ever seen, with eyes that glowed red like coals. The puka, breathes Finn beside me, and I see he has stopped his carving to listen. The puka, my grandmother confirms. It moved through the crowd and people pressed back from it, for everyone knew that to touch the puka on Samhain means death or abduction to the other world. But one man, drunk on mead and courage, claimed he could tame any horse. He reached out to grasp its mane. She pauses, and in that pause I can hear the wind moving through the village, the distant lowing of cattle, the scrape of knives against turnip flesh. The puka transformed, she continues. In an instant the horse became something else. My grandmother could never quite describe what, only that it was terrible to behold, that it had too many limbs and a mouth like a wound. It seized the man and disappeared into the darkness. They found him 3 days later at the edge of the forest, alive but changed. He could no longer speak. His hair had gone white, and his eyes. My grandmother said his eyes had seen something no living person should see. He lived another year, but he was not really there anymore. Something essential had been stolen from him in the other world. Is it true? Aine asks, her eyes wide. Every word, my grandmother says. I knew that man in his final year. He would sit by the fire and stare at nothing, and sometimes he would weep for no reason anyone could understand. The puka had claimed part of his soul, and he was merely waiting to die so the rest of him could follow. More stories follow as we work. The story of the woman who died in childbirth and returned on Samhain, desperately seeking the baby who had died with her, wailing outside homes until dawn. The story of the Dullahan, the headless horseman who appears before death, who rides on Samhain to claim souls marked for death. The story of the Owl Sea stealing a child who wandered too far from the firelight, leaving a changeling in its place, a thing that looked like the child but was hollow and wrong, dying within days while the real child was lost forever in the other world. These stories are not meant to entertain. They are warnings, lessons, reminders of the dangers that walk on Samhain night. They are the accumulated wisdom of generations who have survived by knowing what to fear and how to protect themselves. As the sun begins its descent toward the western hills, we finish our turnip carvings. Tomorrow at dusk, candles will be lit inside them and placed around our home. But for now they sit in rows, their hollow eyes staring, their mouths gaping, an army of grotesque watchers waiting to fulfill their protective purpose. There is one more preparation, my father says as the light begins to fail. He goes into our house and returns with several items. A horseshoe made of iron, sprigs of rowan wood with their red berries still attached, a small pouch of salt. Iron, he says, holding up the horseshoe. The Owl Sea cannot abide iron. It burns them, repels them. This will hang above our door. He demonstrates placing it carefully so that the open end faces upward. The luck must not run out, he explains. Rowan wood, he continues, distributing the sprigs to each of us. Sacred tree, protective tree. Carry this with you tomorrow night. If something harmful approaches, hold it out. It may save your life. And salt, he says, holding up the pouch. Salt is of the earth, of preservation, of life. It marks boundaries that the dead cannot cross without invitation. We will make a line of salt across our threshold tomorrow night. The dead may look in, may call to us, but they cannot enter unless we invite them. I take the rowan sprig, feeling its rough bark, its weight in my hand. It seems such a small thing to protect against the horrors we have been discussing. But faith, I am learning, often resides in small things, in carved turnips and sprigs of wood, in lines of salt and horseshoes of iron. Faith is the belief that these small protections matter, that they create barriers between us and forces that could destroy us. As night falls, we eat our meal in somber silence. Tomorrow this fire will be extinguished. Tomorrow we will sit in darkness and cold, experiencing what the dead experience, honouring them through shared privation. And the day after, the bonfire will burn, the Wicker Man will burn, and 3 people will die screaming while we call it holy. But tonight, the fire still burns. Tonight, we are still in the world of light and warmth and relative safety. Tonight, we can pretend that the horror is not real, that tomorrow will not come, that Samhain is just another night. Except it is not, and tomorrow will come, and I will face it because I have no choice, because this is what it means to be part of this tribe, this people, this ancient covenant with forces older than memory. I go outside one final time before sleep, and I look at the carved turnips sitting in the darkness. Their empty eyes seem to watch me, their gaping mouths seem ready to speak, and I wonder what they would say if they could talk. Would they warn me? Would they reassure me? Or would they simply scream, giving voice to the horror that I am trying so hard not to feel? Tomorrow the fires die. Tomorrow we prepare to meet the dead, and I am not ready. I will never be ready. But ready or not, Samhain is coming, and I will face it as my ancestors have faced it for countless generations, with fear, with faith, and with the desperate hope that the sacrifices we make will be sufficient to see us through one more winter, one more year, one more turn of the wheel that grinds on regardless of human suffering or human prayer. Chapter 5. Extinguishing the flames, the day of darkness has arrived. I wake to a grey dawn, the kind where the sun seems reluctant to rise, as if even it knows what this day brings. The air is cold and damp, carrying the smell of approaching winter. Frost covers the ground in a thin, glistening layer that crunches under my feet when I step outside. Today is the day before Samhain. Today, every fire in our village, in all the villages of our people, will be extinguished. We will enter darkness and cold, and we will remain there until the bonfire is kindled tomorrow night on the sacred hill. This is the ritual that has sustained us since the beginning of time, the yearly death and rebirth of light itself. My mother has been awake since before dawn, preparing. She has baked extra bread while the fire still burns, has cooked porridge that we eat slowly, knowing it will be our last hot meal until the bonfire provides new flame. The food sits heavy in my stomach, less from quantity than from dread. Around mid-morning we begin the final preparations. My father carefully banks the fire in our hearth, building it up one last time so that it burns hot and bright. This fire has burned continuously for a full year, tended day and night, never allowed to go completely out. It is more than warmth and cooking. It is life itself, the light that keeps the darkness at bay, the heat that makes survival possible. This fire, my father tells me as we watch it burn, is descended from last year's bone fire. Every hearth in every home carries that sacred flame. When we extinguish it tonight, we are acknowledging that the year has ended, that the cycle must be completed. Death must come before rebirth. Darkness must reign before light can return. I nod, understanding intellectually but struggling emotionally. The fire is comfort. The fire is safety. To deliberately destroy it feels wrong on a level deeper than thought. As the day progresses, I see our neighbours engaged in similar activities. Mothers holding their children close to the fire, letting them feel its warmth one last time. Old men sitting by hearths they may not live to see relit. Warriors checking their weapons, their iron blades that will provide some protection against the things that walk on Samhain. Everyone preparing in their own way for the ordeal ahead. The carved turnips from yesterday are brought out and placed around our home's exterior. They sit empty and dark for now, their grotesque faces visible in daylight, but not yet animated by inner flame. Tomorrow night, candles will be lit inside them from the new sacred fire. But for now, they are merely shells, waiting. My grandmother spends much of the day in prayer. She kneels before our small collection of sacred objects, a stone with a natural hole through it, a piece of amber containing an ancient insect, a bronze amulet inherited from ancestors whose names are lost to memory. She murmurs words in the old language, older even than the tongue we speak daily, words that sound like wind and water and stone. "What are you praying for?" Ain asks her. "Protection," my grandmother replies. "Mercy, understanding, the strength to endure what we must endure. And I am praying for the 3 who will die tomorrow, that their suffering will be brief, that their souls will find peace, that their sacrifice will be accepted." The mention of the sacrifice casts a pall over the house. We have been trying not to think about Gareth, Ciara and Fiatra, locked in the sacred compound. knowing they have only one more day to live. I wonder what they're doing. Are they praying? Are they weeping? Are they raging against their fate? Or have they somehow found acceptance, convinced themselves that dying for the tribe is an honor worth the agony they will endure? As afternoon fades toward evening, tension builds. The Druids will come at dusk to command the extinguishing of fires. We wait, watching the light fade from the sky, watching our fire burn lower despite my father's attempts to keep it strong. And then we hear it, the sound of staff striking the ground in unison, the measured pace of the Druids processing through the village. They are coming. The time has arrived. I step outside with my family and see the Druids moving from house to house in the gathering darkness. There are 12 of them, walking in 2 columns, their white robes seeming to glow with their own light in the dusk. They carry no torches, no lanterns. They walk in the darkness they are about to impose upon us all. At each house, they stop. The head Druid, not Cathbad himself, but one of his senior assistants, raises his staff and speaks in a voice that carries, despite not being loud. The year dies. The light fails. All fires must be extinguished. Let darkness reign until the bonfire burns. And at each house I watch families comply. I see fathers pouring water on their hearth fires. See the flames die with a hiss and a plume of steam. See smoke filling houses as the fires are killed. I see darkness claiming each home, one by one, spreading through the village like a creeping infection. The Druids move closer to our house and my heart begins to pound. This is real. This is happening. In moments, we will be plunged into darkness and cold, and we will remain there for nearly 2 full days, helpless and exposed. They reach our doorway, and the Druid raises his staff. His face is painted with woad in intricate patterns that make him look inhuman in the fading light. His eyes are cold and distant, looking through us rather than at us. The year dies, he intones. The light fails. All fires must be extinguished. Let darkness reign until the bonfire burns. My father nods, his face set in grim determination. He picks up the water bucket we have prepared for this moment and approaches our hearth. The fire is still burning strongly, its flames dancing, its heat radiating into the room. It seems almost alive, almost aware of what is about to happen to it. "Forgive us," my father whispers to the fire, and I realize he's speaking to the spirit of the flame itself, to the essence of light and heat that has sustained us for a year. Then he pours the water. The fire dies with a violent hiss, like a living thing in its death throes. Steam and smoke billow up, filling our house with acrid grey clouds that make us cough and our eyes water. The smell is choking, wet ash, extinguished flame, the death of warmth, and then darkness. Not the gradual darkness of evening, but sudden, total darkness. The fire is gone. No light remains in our house. The smoke slowly clears, leaving us in a blackness so complete that I cannot see my hand when I hold it inches from my face. The cold comes immediately after, rushing in to fill the space where warmth had been. It is not merely the absence of heat, but something more. A penetrating chill that goes straight to the bone, that makes me shiver violently despite my wool cloak. "Light the candle," my mother says, her voice tight with fear. My father fumbles in the darkness. I hear him moving, hear the scrape of flint against steel. Sparks fly, visible as brief stars in the absolute black. Once, twice, 3 times. Finally a candle catches, and weak yellow light pushes back a tiny portion of the darkness. But it is not the same. Candlelight is weak and flickering, providing barely enough illumination to see faces. It does not warm. It does not comfort. It is merely a small defiance against the darkness, a tiny flame that the night could extinguish with a breath. We huddle together near the dead hearth, pulling our cloaks tight around us. The house that was warm and welcoming an hour ago has become cold and hostile. Every shadow seems to harbour threat. Every sound makes us jump. Outside, I hear similar scenes playing out across the village. The coughs of people breathing smoke from extinguished fires. The crying of children frightened by the sudden darkness. The nervous lowing of cattle who sense that something fundamental has changed. And beneath it all, a silence. The absence of the ever-present crackle and pop of hearth fires creates a void that feels unnatural. Fire has been constant in human life since before memory. To be without it feels wrong on a primal level, feels like a violation of the natural order. This is what the dead experience, my grandmother says quietly. Cold, darkness, the absence of warmth and light and life. We sit as they sit in their graves, and we remember what we owe them. We remember why we must honour them when they return tomorrow night. The hours pass with excruciating slowness. We cannot sleep. The cold is too penetrating, the darkness too absolute, the fear too great. We sit together, speaking in whispers, trying to comfort each other, but there is no real comfort to be had. My father tells stories, attempting to distract us from our misery. He speaks of ancient heroes, of great battles, of the gods and their deeds, but even his stories cannot fully dispel the oppressive atmosphere. The darkness presses in from all sides, and the single candle seems to be losing its battle against it. Around midnight, though time has become difficult to judge in the darkness, we hear something outside. Footsteps, but not human footsteps. Something moving with an irregular gait, something that seems to pause at our door. We freeze, holding our breath. My father's hand moves to the iron knife at his belt. My mother pulls aim close. My grandmother's lips move in silent prayer. The thing outside scratches at our door, not knocking but scratching like claws against wood. The sound goes on for several minutes, and then we hear breathing. Heavy, laboured breathing that sounds wet and diseased. Do not open the door, my grandmother hisses. Do not speak to it, do not acknowledge it. It cannot enter unless we invite it. We sit in terror as the thing continues scratching, continues breathing. Then, after what feels like an eternity, it moves away. We hear its footsteps receding, hear it stop at another house, and we hear, distantly, someone scream. "The veil is already thinning," my grandmother whispers. "Tomorrow night will be worse. Far worse." The rest of the night crawls by. We take turns sleeping in brief, uncomfortable intervals, always leaving someone awake to watch. The candle burns down and must be replaced. The cold deepens until our breath mists in the air, and outside we hear things moving, hear sounds that might be animals or might be something else. When grey dawn finally arrives, seeping weakly through the cracks around our door, the relief is palpable. We have survived the night. We are still alive, still sane, still together. But there is no fire to warm us, no hot food to eat. We huddle in our cloaks, shivering, eating cold bread and dried meat, waiting for nightfall when we will process to the sacred hill for the bonfire ceremony, for the sacrifices, for the full opening of the veil between worlds. "One more day," my father says, his voice hoarse from the cold. "One more night, and then the fire will return, the sun will return, we will survive." I want to believe him. I want to have his certainty. But sitting in the cold darkness of our lightless home, listening to things scratching at our door, knowing that tonight 3 people will burn alive while we watch, I'm not certain of anything except that the world is darker and more terrible than I ever imagined, and that survival demands sacrifices I am not sure I am capable of making. The day drags on in misery. We cannot work. The cold has stiffened our fingers, and without fire we cannot accomplish most tasks. We cannot cook. We cannot warm ourselves. We can only wait, and waiting in darkness and cold is its own form of torture. As afternoon fades toward evening, we begin to prepare for the procession to the sacred hill. We dress in our best clothing, such as it is, clean tunics, cloaks without holes, whatever finery we possess. This is a sacred occasion, despite, or perhaps because of, the horror that will unfold. My father distributes the protective items we prepared yesterday. I hang the rowan wood around my neck on a leather cord. I slip the iron knife into my belt. I clutch the small bag of salt that I will use to mark protective boundaries if needed. The carved turnips are brought inside, and from our single candle, we light smaller candles to place within them. As each turnip is lit, its grotesque face comes alive with dancing shadows and flickering light. We carry them outside and place them around our home's perimeter. In the darkness, they glow like demon heads, their empty eyes seeming to watch, their gaping mouths seeming to whisper warnings. All across the village, other families are doing the same. Hundreds of carved turnips bloom into light, creating a constellation of demonic faces that transform our familiar village into something alien and frightening. The effect is both beautiful and horrible. Beautiful in the way that a carefully constructed nightmare might be beautiful. Horrible in what it represents and what it prepares us for. As full darkness falls, we hear the horn, 3 long blasts echoing from the direction of the sacred hill, the signal. The bone fire ceremony is beginning. It is time to process to the hill, to witness the kindling of the new fire, to watch the Wicker man burn, to face whatever walks on Samhain night. We leave our house, our single candle extinguished, and join the stream of people moving through the darkness toward the hill. Hundreds of us, perhaps thousands, walking without light, stumbling over roots and stones, moving toward the place where fire will be born again and 3 people will die. The darkness is absolute away from the village. The moon has not yet risen. The stars provide only the faintest illumination. We walk blind, trusting our feet to find the path. Trusting that we will reach the hill without being lost in the darkness that presses close on all sides. And in that darkness, I feel them. The dead, the spirits, the things that do not belong to our world but walk in it freely now that the veil has fallen. They are close, so close I could reach out and touch them. They whisper in voices like wind through dry leaves. They brush against us with fingers of cold air. They watch with eyes that have no light. Children cry. Women murmur prayers. Men try to project courage while their hands shake with fear. We are a people walking through death to reach a ceremony that will involve more death, hoping that the deaths we offer will be sufficient to protect us from the deaths that surround us. The sacred hill looms ahead, a dark bulk against the slightly less dark sky, and at its summit, I can see figures moving, the Druids, preparing the bone fire, preparing the Wicker man, preparing for the night when the year dies completely and must be reborn in blood and flame. I walk with my family, surrounded by my people, and I am more afraid than I have ever been, because I know what is coming, I know what I will see, and I know that after tonight, I will never be the same. The fires are extinguished, the darkness reigns, and Samhain has begun. Chapter 6. The Bonefire Gathering. The sacred hill rises before us like a wound in the earth, its slopes dark and foreboding in the starless night. We climb in silence, hundreds of us moving as one body up the ancient path that has been worn smooth by countless generations making this same pilgrimage. My feet know the way even in darkness. I have walked this path every year of my life for smaller ceremonies, but never like this, never as an adult who must witness and understand what truly occurs on Samhain night. The darkness is not merely an absence of light, but a presence unto itself. It has texture and weight, pressing against my skin like cold water. I can feel things moving within it, presences that slide past just beyond the edge of perception, that whisper in voices too low to understand but urgent enough to make my heart race. My father walks ahead of me, his hand occasionally reaching back to ensure I'm still there. My mother supports my grandmother, whose ancient legs struggle with the climb. Ain is somewhere behind us with other children, still to be sheltered from the worst of what will happen, though they must witness enough to begin their education in the ways of our people. Around us the others climb, neighbours I have known all my life, faces I cannot see in the darkness but whose presence I sense. I hear Finn somewhere to my left, his breathing laboured from the climb. I hear women praying in whispers, invoking the goddess for protection. I hear old men coughing, the sound harsh and wet in the cold air, and beneath all human sounds, I hear other things. The rustle of movement in the forest that flanks the path. Movement too large to be animals. Movement that seems to pace our procession. I hear whispers in no language I recognize. Sounds that might be words or might be wind through bare branches. I hear breathing that does not come from human lungs. A sound like bellows pumping in some vast forge. Do not look into the forest, my father warns quietly. Do not acknowledge what you hear. Keep your eyes on the path. Keep moving. Keep your protective charms close. I clutch the rowan wood at my throat. Feel the iron knife cold against my side. Such small protections against what moves in the darkness. But faith, I remind myself, resides in small things. It must. Because if these talismans offer no protection, then we are utterly helpless. The children begin crying as we climb higher, not just from fear, though there is that, but from something else. Some of them are pointing into the darkness, saying they see things. A woman screams that her dead husband is walking beside her, that she can see his face pale and rotting in the darkness. She is hushed by those around her, but I hear the terror in her voice, and I believe her. The veil is not merely thin now, it is gone. The boundary between our world and the other world has dissolved completely, and they walk among us. The dead, the spirits, the ancient powers that normally remain safely distant. As we near the hill's summit, I begin to see a faint glow. Not the warm orange of normal fire, but something colder, greener, less natural. As we crest the final slope, the source becomes visible, and my breath catches in my throat. The bonfire has not yet been kindled, but the Druids have prepared everything. At the hill summit, they have constructed an enormous pyre, not of wood alone, but of bones. Cattle bones form the bulk of it, white and grey in the strange pre-dawn darkness, stacked in careful patterns that suggest sacred geometry. Sheep bones fill the gaps, and here and there, barely visible, are bones of a different shape, too long to be animal, too carefully positioned to be anything but deliberate. Human bones, from last year's sacrifice, from sacrifices stretching back through time. The dead are not merely among us, they are the foundation of the fire that will sustain us. Around the pyre, the Druids have drawn patterns in white chalk that seem to glow faintly with their own light. Spirals and circles, symbols I recognize from the standing stones, marks of power and protection and sacred purpose. And beyond the pyre, towering over everything, stands the Wicker Man. I've seen it before, but not like this. Not in darkness, not silhouetted against the slowly lightening eastern sky, not knowing that within hours it will be filled with living people. It is massive, 20 feet tall at least, woven from willow withies into the crude shape of a human figure. Its arms are raised as if in supplication or surrender. Its body is hollow, the gaps in the weaving large enough to see through to the empty space within. Empty for now. We arrange ourselves in a great circle around the pyre and the Wicker Man, hundreds of us creating a ring perhaps 200 feet across. Families cluster together for comfort and protection. We are shoulder to shoulder, pressed close, taking what comfort we can from human proximity in the face of what surrounds us. Because around us, beyond the circle, I can see them now. The dead, the spirits, the things that have no right to exist in our world but walk in it freely on this night when all boundaries fail. They are not solid, not fully. They shimmer and fade, present one moment and absent the next. Some appear almost human. I see a woman in the tattered remains of burial clothes, her face recognizable as someone who died last winter. I see a warrior with the wounds that killed him still visible, gaping holes in his chest that should not allow him to stand but somehow do. But others are less human. I see shapes that might once have been people but have been twisted by time in the other world, their forms elongated and wrong, their faces no longer quite faces. I see things that were never human at all, the owl sea, the fairy folk, beautiful and terrible, their eyes reflecting light that does not exist. And moving among them all, I see something that makes my blood freeze. A horse, but not a horse. Too large, too black, its eyes glowing red like coals, its movements wrong in ways I cannot quite identify. The Pusa. My grandmother's stories were true. It walks among the gathered dead and spirits, and where it passes, even they shrink away. At the centre of the circle, in the space between the pyre and the Wicker Man, I see three figures, the chosen. Gareth, Moira, who was renamed Chiara for the ceremony, and Fiatra. They are bound at the wrists with ropes of braided leather, but they are not gagged. Their faces are painted white with chalk, marked with symbols that make them look more like spirits than humans. They wear white robes, the colour of death and mourning and sacrifice. Gareth stands with dignity, his old face calm, almost serene. He has made peace with his fate, or perhaps he's simply too exhausted to fight anymore. Ciara, young, small, fragile, weeps silently, her tears cutting clean tracks through the chalk on her face. And Fiatra rages. Even bound, even marked for death, he fights his bonds, curses the Druids, spits at anyone who comes near. His pride will not allow him to accept what cannot be changed. The Druids surround them, 12 men in white robes, their faces painted with woad in patterns that make them look like spirits themselves. Cathbad stands at their centre, his ancient face carved from stone, his eyes reflecting something cold and distant and utterly inhuman. He raises his staff and the entire gathering falls silent. Even Fiachra's cursing dies to a whisper. Even the children stop their crying. The silence is profound. I can hear my own heartbeat, can hear the breathing of those around me, can hear sounds from beyond the circle that might be wind, or might be the whispers of the gathered dead. We stand at the threshold, Cathbad intones, his voice carrying despite not being raised. It seems to come from everywhere and nowhere, resonating in my bones. The year has died, the light has failed, all fires are extinguished. We sit in darkness as the dead sit in their graves, and we wait for the return of the light, the rebirth of the year, the continuation of the cycle that sustains all life. He pauses, his ice-coloured eyes sweeping across the assembled crowd. The veil between worlds has fallen. The dead walk among us. The other world and our world occupy the same space. What separates the living from the dead, the order from chaos, the tamed from the wild, all of it has dissolved. We are vulnerable. We are exposed. We are at the mercy of forces we cannot fully understand or control. The fear in the crowd is palpable. I hear people shifting, moving closer together, clutching their protective charms. Around us, the shapes beyond the circle press closer, as if drawn by Cathbad's words. To survive this night, he continues, to ensure that the sun returns, that the year is reborn, that life continues, we must perform the ancient rituals, we must honour the dead, we must feed the powers that sustain us, we must make sacrifice. He gestures to the bone pyre. This fire will be kindled using sacred methods, using woods and stones gathered according to ancient practice, using words of power that must not be altered by even a syllable. This fire will be blessed by sacrifice, consecrated by blood, purified by bones. From this fire every hearth will be relit. This fire will carry us through winter. This fire is life itself. He turns to the three chosen, and his voice becomes softer but no less terrible. And these three souls will serve as messengers to the gods, as offerings to the powers that demand tribute, as prayers made manifest in flesh and blood and screaming that carries to all realms. Their deaths will purchase our survival. Their agony will balance the books that must be balanced. Their sacrifice will be remembered. Gareth nods slowly. Ciara closes her eyes. Fiachra screams a curse so vile that several people gasp. The ceremony begins, Cathbad announces. Let all witness. Let all remember. Let all understand the price we pay for life, for light, for the continuation of all we hold dear. He strikes his staff against the stone at his feet 3 times, and the sound echoes across the hilltop like thunder. The bonfire ceremony has begun. The sacrifices will be made, and I will watch, because I am a man now. Because this is what we do, because survival demands witnesses to horror. Around us the dead press closer. Above us the stars seem to have disappeared, leaving only darkness and the slowly gathering dawn that feels impossibly distant. And before us the Wicker Man stands empty and waiting, patient as death itself, knowing that soon it will be filled with screaming humanity and set ablaze in the name of gods who hunger for suffering. I am 19 years old, standing on a hill in ancient Ireland, and I am about to witness Halloween's birth. The real Halloween, stripped of candy and costumes and pretend scares. The Halloween born in blood and bonfire smoke, consecrated by human sacrifice, forged in terror so profound that it echoes across 2 millennia. The Druids begin to chant. The ceremony has begun, and there is no turning back now. Chapter 7. The ritual begins. Cathbad raises his arms to the lightning sky, and the other Druids join him in a chant that seems to come from the earth itself. The words are in the oldest tongue, older than the language we speak daily, older perhaps than human memory. They sound like wind through stone, like water over ancient rock, like the grinding of the earth's bones beneath our feet. The chant builds, layer upon layer of voices creating harmonies that should not be possible from human throats. I feel the sound in my chest, in my skull, vibrating through my body until I'm not certain where the chanting ends and my own heartbeat begins. Around me, others sway slightly, caught in the rhythm of these ancient words of power. The Druids move in a circle around the bone pyre, their white robes flowing, their painted faces catching the first hints of pre-dawn grey. They carry no torches yet. The fire must be kindled in the sacred manner, from nothing, from the void itself. This is not mere practicality, but theology made manifest. Light must be born from darkness, life from death, order from chaos. Cathbad gestures, and two younger druids step forward carrying items I recognize from tales, but have never seen used. Sacred stones, not ordinary flint, but special rocks gathered from places of power, from ancient cairns and holy wells, from the boundaries between our world and the other world. And sacred woods, 9 types, each gathered according to ritual specifications, each representing different aspects of existence. Oak for strength and endurance, ash for protection and connection between worlds, hawthorn for the fairy folk and the other world, rowan for protection against malevolent spirits, willow for death and rebirth, birch for new beginnings, holly for the turning of seasons, hazel for wisdom and sacred knowledge, and elder, most sacred and most dangerous, gathered only by druids who know the proper prayers to avoid its curse. The woods are arranged in a specific pattern at the base of the bone pyre, and I see now that the bones themselves have been positioned with geometric precision. This is not random. This is sacred architecture, a structure designed to channel power, to focus energy, to create a bridge between the material and the divine. Cathbad begins to strike the sacred stones together, once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. He strikes again, speaking words I do not understand, words that seem to shimmer in the air between the stones. 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. On the 7th strike, a spark. It hangs in the air for a moment, a tiny point of light in the darkness, and the entire gathering holds its breath. That spark is more than mere fire. It is the first light after universal darkness. It is the sun's promise to return. It is life itself refusing to surrender to death. The spark falls onto the sacred woods. For a terrible moment, nothing happens. The spark sits on the dry wood, glowing but not catching, and I can feel the tension in the crowd building toward panic. What if the fire will not light? What if the gods reject our offering? What if this is the year the sun does not return? Then, smoke. A thin tendril rising from where the spark fell. The smoke thickens and suddenly a small flame appears, orange and yellow and beautiful beyond measure. The flame grows, spreading from one piece of sacred wood to another, climbing through the carefully constructed structure toward the bones above. A sound rises from the gathered crowd, not quite a cheer, not quite a prayer, but something between. Relief and reverence and desperate hope all mixed together. The fire is kindled, the light has returned, the first impossibility of the night has been accomplished. The druids continue their chant, now adding new layers as the fire grows. They are directing it, I realize, channeling it with their words and their movements. The flames climb through the bone pyre with unnatural speed, leaping from level to level, consuming the sacred woods with a hunger that seems almost alive. As the flames reach the bones, the smell changes. This is not the smell of burning wood. This is something else entirely, a scent that speaks to something deep in human memory, something that makes my stomach clench and my throat tighten. It is not quite like cooking meat, not quite like burning hair or horn. It is the smell of bones themselves burning, of the calcium and minerals and residue of life being consumed by fire. The smell intensifies as more bones catch, and I see people around me covering their noses and mouths. Some are gagging, unable to control their body's revulsion at this scent that speaks of death and desecration. But we cannot look away. We must witness. This is our duty as members of the tribe. The fire roars to life now, climbing 10 feet high, then 15, then 20. The heat of it reaches us even at the edge of the circle. A wall of warmth that is both comforting and terrifying. The flames dance and twist, casting wild shadows that make the wicker man behind the pyre seem to move, seem to breathe, seem to anticipate its own immolation. And by the light of the bone fire I can see them more clearly now. The dead, the spirits, the things that surround our circle. They are drawn to the fire like moths to a candle, pressing close to the edge of our gathering but not crossing some invisible boundary that the Druids' chalk marks have created. I see faces I recognize. My grandfather, his features gaunt and hollow but unmistakable. I see others, dozens of others, people who died last winter or the winter before, all standing at the edge of the firelight, watching us with eyes that hold hunger and longing and something that might be envy. They envy us our warmth, our light, our life, and on this night they have returned to claim what they can of it. Among the merely dead, I see other things. The Alcee stand tall and terrible, beautiful in the way that a drawn blade is beautiful, deadly in the way that frozen ground is deadly. They watch us with expressions of amusement or contempt, viewing our ritual as the desperate scrambling of insects trying to survive forces we cannot comprehend. And there, moving between the dead and the living, I see shapes that are neither, things that shimmer and shift, that wear faces like masks that might be demons or angels or something, for which we have no words. They are interested in our fire, in our sacrifice, in what we are about to do. Cathbad raises his arms again, and the chanting shifts to a new pattern. This is the second phase of the ceremony. The animal sacrifices. From behind the Wicker man, Druids lead forth the animals that will be offered. First comes a white bull, massive and powerful, its horns tipped with bronze. It walks calmly, as if accepting its fate. The Druids have prepared it for this. Drugs in its feed, prayers whispered in its ears, rituals performed to ease its transition from life to death. The bull is positioned before the bonfire, and Cathbad approaches it with a bronze blade that catches and reflects the firelight until it seems to be made of flame itself. He speaks words over the bull, prayers or commands or explanations. Then, with practiced efficiency, he draws the blade across the bull's throat. Blood pours forth, steaming in the cold air, caught in bronze bowls held by younger Druids. The bull makes a sound, low and terrible. The sound of its life leaving, and then collapses. Its legs fold beneath it, and it lies before the fire, blood still pumping from its severed throat, creating a dark pool that reflects firelight like a mirror. The entrails are removed and examined. The Druids study them intently, reading signs that are invisible to me but apparently clear to them. They speak in low voices, nodding, occasionally pointing at some aspect of the organs that holds meaning. The signs are good, Cathbad finally announces. The white bull's sacrifice is accepted. The gods are pleased with this first offering. More animals follow. 3 black sheep, their throats cut one after another, their blood mixing with the bull's. A pair of goats, their horns painted gold. Roosters with red combs, their death crows cut short by bronze blades. Each death is performed with ritual precision, each killing accompanied by chants and prayers, each life offered up as down payment on the debt we owe to powers that sustain existence itself. The blood pools before the fire, so much blood that it creates streams running down the hillside. I watch it flow, dark and thick, and I think about how life is contained in blood, how the essence of existence can pour out onto cold stone and disappear into earth. Around me I hear people praying, making their own offerings of words and promises. My father stands rigid, his face set in an expression I cannot read. My mother has her eyes closed, her lips moving silently. My grandmother watches everything with ancient eyes that have seen this too many times, eyes that understand what it means and what it costs. The animal sacrifice is complete. The Druids arrange the bodies around the base of the bonfire. The flames are fed by flesh now as well as wood and bone, and the fire roars higher, a column of flame reaching toward the sky that is slowly, reluctantly, beginning to lighten with approaching dawn. But dawn is still distant, and the true sacrifice has not yet occurred. Cathbad turns to face the 3 chosen, and the atmosphere shifts. What has been solemn now becomes terrible. What has been ritual now becomes horror. Because animals, however sacred, are still animals. What comes next is something else entirely. Gareth, son of Fergus, Cathbad intones, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent gathering. Kira, daughter of Brennan, Fiachra, son of Cormac, you have been chosen by the gods to serve as messengers, to carry our prayers to the divine, to purchase with your deaths the continuation of life for all gathered here. He pauses, and in that pause I hear my own heartbeat, loud and rapid in my chest. You will enter the Wicker Man, he continues. You will burn as an offering to the gods, as fuel for the sacred fire that will sustain us through winter. Your names will be remembered. Your sacrifice will be honoured. And through your deaths the sun will return. The year will be reborn, and we will survive to see spring. Gareth nods, accepting. Kiara weeps, but does not resist. Fiacra screams a curse so vile that several Druids flinch, but they do not respond to his rage. They have heard such curses before. They will hear them again. The three are led toward the Wicker Man, and I realise with dawning horror that I am about to watch 3 people be burned alive. I'm about to hear their screams. I'm about to smell their burning flesh, and I must witness it all, must remember it all, must carry it with me for the rest of my life. Because this is Samhain. This is the price. This is what we do. The Druids open a section of the Wicker Man's chest. It is hinged, I see now, designed to be opened and closed. Inside, the hollow space waits, empty, patient, inevitable. Gareth is lifted first. He does not struggle. They place him inside the wicker structure, position him so he is standing, though his legs are bound together. He looks out through the gaps in the weaving, and his eyes find mine across the firelit space. What I see in those eyes haunts me. Acceptance, yes, but also terror. However much he has made peace with his fate, however much he has convinced himself this is honour, he's still a man facing death by burning, and he is afraid. Kiara is placed next, her small body positioned beside Gareth's. She has stopped weeping. Her face is blank now, shock or resignation, or perhaps her mind protecting her by separating from her body. Fiachra fights until the end. 4 Druids must lift him, must force him into the wicker structure, while he screams and struggles and spits. They manage to get him inside, position him, and quickly close the Wicker Man's chest, binding it shut with the ropes of braided leather. The 3 chosen stand inside the Wicker Man, visible through the gaps in the weaving. They are 20 feet above the ground, positioned so that when the fire is lit below, they will burn from the legs upward, their agony prolonged as long as possible because suffering is part of the offering. Pain is part of the prayer. Cathbad approaches the Wicker Man with a torch that has been lit from the bonfire. This is the moment. This is the point of no return. Hear us, gods of sky and earth, he calls out, his voice rising above the crackle of flames. Accept this offering. Accept this sacrifice. Accept these 3 souls who we send as messengers. Let their deaths purchase our lives. Let their pain demonstrate our faith. Let their burning be a beacon to all powers that sustain existence, a light in the darkness, a prayer made manifest in fire and flesh. He touches the torch to the base of the Wicker Man. The structure catches immediately. It was designed to burn, dry willow withes, treated with some substance to make them more flammable, woven with gaps that allow fire to climb quickly. Flames race up the Wicker Man's legs, and inside the 3 chosen see what is coming. Gareth begins to pray, his voice strong and clear even as flames lick at his feet. Kiara screams, and Fiacra unleashes curses that blend with screams in a sound I will hear in my nightmares for the rest of my life. The bonfire ceremony has entered its final, most terrible phase. The Wicker Man is burning, 3 people are dying, and I stand at the edge of the circle watching Halloween being born in blood and fire and screaming that carries across the centuries to echo in every jack-o'-lantern, every costume, every celebration that will one day pretend this horror never existed. But it did exist. It does exist. And I am here, witnessing it, becoming the kind of man who can watch people burn and call it sacred. The flames climb higher, and the screaming continues. And I wonder if I will ever be able to close my eyes without seeing this, without hearing this, without smelling this. I wonder if any of us will. Chapter 8. The Wicker Man burns. The flames climb the Wicker Man with terrifying speed, racing up its legs like living things eager to consume. I watch, unable to look away despite every instinct screaming at me to close my eyes, to run, to be anywhere but here. But I am frozen, rooted to the earth, compelled by horror and duty and the terrible need to witness what my people are doing in the name of survival. The fire reaches Gareth's feet first. He's standing highest in the structure, and I can see his face clearly through the gaps in the burning willow. He has stopped praying now. His mouth opens in a scream that starts low and builds to something that barely sounds human. The sound of a man feeling his flesh begin to char, feeling his skin blister and split, feeling pain beyond anything the human mind was designed to process. Beside me, my father's hand grips my shoulder so tightly it hurts. "Watch," he hisses in my ear. "You must watch. To look away dishonors their sacrifice. To close your eyes wastes their deaths. Watch, Brennan. Remember, this is the price we pay." So I watch. I watch as Gareth's feet and legs blacken in the flames. I watch as his screams continue, impossibly loud, impossibly sustained. I watch as he tries desperately to lift his feet, to escape the fire that is consuming him from below, but his legs are bound, and there is nowhere to go, no escape possible. Chiara's screams have become a continuous sound, high and sharp, the screaming of a child who cannot understand why this is happening, who cannot process the agony that is overwhelming her small body. Her voice breaks and reforms, and each time it returns it is less human, more animal, pure suffering given voice. And Fiachra has stopped screaming curses and now simply screams, his rage transformed into agony, his pride burned away by fire that cares nothing for courage or defiance or anything except consuming flesh. The smell reaches us now, not just burning wood, not just bones, but human flesh cooking. It is sweet and horrible, like meat over a fire, but wrong, fundamentally wrong in a way that makes my stomach heave. Around me I hear people vomiting, hear children sobbing, hear grown warriors weeping openly. But none of us look away. We cannot. This is our duty. This is what we do. The Wicker Man is fully engulfed now, a tower of flame 20 feet high, roaring and crackling and sending sparks spiraling into the darkness. Inside it, barely visible through the flames and smoke, the three chosen writhe in their bonds. They are dying, but dying slowly. Their suffering prolonged because suffering is part of the offering, because the gods demand not just death but agony. Gareth's screams suddenly cut off. I see through the flames that his head has fallen forward, unconscious or dead I cannot tell. But his body continues to burn, continues to twist in the heat, even though he no longer controls it. Sierra's screaming goes on, and on, and on. Her voice is breaking now, becoming hoarse, but still the sound comes, wordless and terrible. The sound of a child burning alive. I want to cover my ears, want to block out that sound, but I dare not. My father's grip on my shoulder reminds me of my duty. Watch, remember, bear witness. The Druids are chanting louder now, trying to drown out the screaming, trying to transform these sounds of agony into sacred music, trying to convince themselves and us that this horror has meaning, has purpose, has value. Their voices rise and fall in complex harmonies, and I realize they are experienced at this, have practiced drowning out, screaming with chanting, have learned how to make murder sound holy. Around us, the dead and the spirits press closer, drawn by the suffering, drawn by the offering, drawn by death, occurring in this liminal space where worlds overlap. I see them more clearly now in the firelight, the dead watching with hollow eyes, the Arsees smiling their terrible smiles, the nameless things that hunger for pain, the way humans hunger for bread. And I wonder, in my horror and confusion, whether the gods truly demand this, or whether we created gods who demand this because we needed to give meaning to the terrible things we do, needed to transform murder into sacrifice, needed to believe that burning children alive somehow purchases cosmic favor rather than simply demonstrating human capacity for horror. But I am 19 years old, and these are dangerous thoughts, blasphemous thoughts, thoughts that could get me marked for the next Wicker Man if I spoke them aloud. So I push them down and watch and try to believe that this has meaning, that their deaths serve purpose, that we are not simply monsters who burn people alive and call it holy. Fiachra's screaming has become a gurgling sound now, as if his lungs are filling with smoke or his throat is too damaged to form proper sounds. He is still alive. I can see him moving, can see his body jerking in the flames, but his screaming has become something else, something that barely sounds like it comes from a human throat. The Wicker Man is collapsing now, its structure weakened by fire. Parts of it fall away, sending showers of sparks into the night sky. Through the gaps, I can see the three bodies more clearly, can see skin blackening and splitting, can see flesh charring, can see things I will never be able to unsee no matter how long I live. Kiara's screaming finally stops. The silence is almost worse than the sound was, because I know what that silence means. She is dead. A child of 10 winters, burned alive in the name of gods who may or may not exist, who may or may not care, who may or may not even notice this offering we have made. Fiatra hangs limp now, his body still burning but no longer moving. Dead or unconscious. Either way, he is beyond screaming, beyond pain, beyond the horror of his own immolation. The Wicker Man collapses further, sending burning debris in all directions. Druids rush forward with long poles to push the burning remains back toward the centre, to keep the fire contained, to prevent it from spreading to the gathered crowd. They work with practiced efficiency, clearly having done this many times before. As the structure falls completely, I see the three bodies clearly for a moment before smoke obscures them again. They are barely recognizable as human, blackened, twisted, melted by the heat into shapes that look more like burnt wood than people. But they were people. Minutes ago, they were people with thoughts and fears and hopes. Now they are charred meat, offerings to gods whose hunger seems insatiable. The screaming has finally, mercifully stopped. The Wicker Man is reduced to burning ruins, and in the sudden relative silence, broken only by the roar of flames and the Druids chanting, I hear something else, weeping. Hundreds of people weeping. Not loud, not wailing, but soft crying that spreads through the crowd like the ripples from a stone thrown in water. We are all crying now, men and women and children, even warriors who have killed in battle, even old people who have seen this before. We cry because we are human, and what we have just witnessed and participated in is horror that demands tears. The Druids show no emotion. Their faces remain impassive as they continue their rituals around the burning remains. They approach the fire with long staves, stirring the embers, spreading them, ensuring that the bodies are completely consumed. No bone must remain whole. No flesh must survive intact. The offering must be complete. Cathbad raises his arms again, and his voice cuts through the weeping. The sacrifice is accepted, he announces. The gods have received our offering. The three chosen have delivered our message, and in return the sun will rise. The year will be reborn. Life will continue. He gestures to the bonfire, which still burns strong beside the ruins of the Wicker Man. This is the sacred fire blessed by sacrifice, consecrated by blood. From this flame, you will relight your hearths. This fire will sustain you through winter. This fire is the sun's promise to return, purchased with the lives of 3 who died so that hundreds might live. Druids begin lighting torches from the bonfire, preparing to distribute the sacred flame to every home in our territory. But this will come later. First, there are more ceremonies to perform. First, we must commune with the dead. First, we must survive the rest of Samhain night. As the Druids work, I finally allow myself to look away from the burning remains. I look at my father and see tears streaming down his face, though his expression remains stoic. I look at my grandmother and see her lips moving in prayer, though whether she is praying for the dead or for us who survive, I cannot tell. I look at the gathered crowd and see faces reflecting horror and relief in equal measure. Horror at what we have witnessed, relief that we were not chosen, that it was them and not us, that we have survived another Samhain, and shame at that relief, because to feel relief at another's suffering is itself a form of guilt. Around us the dead and spirits have withdrawn slightly, satisfied or sated or perhaps simply waiting for what comes next. The Alcee watch with expressions that might be approval, or might be contempt. It is impossible to read emotion in faces that are not quite human. The ruins of the Wicker Man continue burning, and I realize that this image will be with me forever. 3 people screaming as they burn, the smell of cooking human flesh, the sound of prayers trying to drown out agony. The belief, or desperate hope, that somehow this horror serves a purpose beyond itself. I am 19 years old, and I have witnessed Halloween being born. Not the Halloween of costumes and candy, but the real Halloween, the ancient Samhain where we bargain with death itself, where we offer blood and pain as down payment on survival, where we burn people alive and call it sacred. And the most terrible thing, the thing I will spend the rest of my life trying to understand, is that I do believe. Despite the horror, despite the doubt, Despite everything human in me that recoils from what I have seen, I believe. Because the alternative is to believe that we did this for nothing, that 3 people suffered and died for no purpose, that we are simply monsters playing at religion. I cannot accept that. I must not accept that. So I believe in the gods who demand sacrifice. I believe in the cosmic balance that requires payment in blood. I believe that these deaths purchase something, if not divine favour, then at least the maintenance of the order that keeps chaos at bay. Because if I do not believe, then I am complicit in murder. And I must live with myself after this night ends. The burning continues, the ceremonies continue, and Samhain night has only just begun. Chapter 9. Communion with the Dead. The Wicker man has collapsed into embers now, its occupants reduced to ash and blackened bone indistinguishable from the cattle bones that fuel the sacred fire. The screaming has stopped, replaced by the steady roar of flames and the rhythmic chanting of Druids who continue their work as if they have not just presided over the burning of 3 people. Perhaps to them, after decades of this, it has become routine. Perhaps they have learned to separate their humanity from their duty. Or perhaps they have simply gone mad in a way that allows them to function. I stand trembling, my legs weak beneath me, tasting bile in the back of my throat. I have vomited once already, though I tried to do it quietly, ashamed of my weakness even as dozens around me did the same. My father's hand remains on my shoulder, steadying me or perhaps steadying himself. We hold each other up, survivors of a horror that has ended but whose memory will never fade. Cathbad's voice rises above the crackle of flames. The sacrifice is complete. The offering has been made. Now we honour the dead who walk among us this night. Now we commune with those who have returned. The atmosphere shifts. What was terrible now becomes eerie. What was focused on the burning becomes diffuse, spreading out to encompass the entire hilltop and the gathered crowd. The Druids begin a new chant, this one softer, more inviting than commanding. They are calling to the dead, inviting them closer, opening pathways for communication between the living and those who have crossed beyond. From somewhere behind the bonfire, younger Druids bring forth tables, longboards set on trestles, hastily assembled but draped with fine cloth. Upon these tables they place food and drink, the best of our harvest, the finest portions of meat, fresh bread, mead and ale in quantities that speak of serious offering rather than token gesture. Call upon your dead, Cathbad instructs the gathered crowd. Speak their names, invite them to feast. Honour them with food and drink and remembrance, for tonight the boundary is gone. Tonight they walk among us. Tonight they hunger for what they have lost. Warmth, sustenance, the taste of life itself. Around me, people begin to speak, their voices hesitant at first, then growing stronger. I hear my neighbour call to his father, dead 2 winters ago from a wasting disease. I hear a woman invoke her infant daughter, lost to fever before she could speak her first words. I hear old voices calling to older dead, summoning parents and grandparents and siblings lost to time. My father speaks, his voice rough with emotion. Brennan, my brother, for whom my son is named, I call you. Come, feast with us. Know that you are remembered. Know that your death in battle was not in vain, that we honour your courage, that your name lives on. My grandmother calls to her husband, dead 15 years now. Fergus, my love, my heart, I call you. Come, sit with me as you did in life. I have kept your memory alive. I have told our grandchildren of your kindness, your strength. Come, drink the mead you loved. Be with us this night. My mother's voice shakes as she calls to the infant daughter she lost. My sister I never knew. Neve, little one who barely drew breath, I call you. Come, be held in your mother's arms one more time. Know that not a day passes that I do not think of you. Know that you are loved. I stand silent, unable to speak, my throat tight with fear and grief, and something else I cannot name. Who do I call? My grandfather, whom I knew only as a child, my uncle Brennan, whom I barely remember? The faceless ancestors stretching back through generations, all of them dead, all of them supposedly walking this hilltop tonight. But as I stand silent, I feel something, a presence, a cold that is not merely temperature, but something more, the chill of death itself, of absence, of the void that exists where life once was. And I know with a certainty that bypasses rational thought that the dead have answered our call. They are here. I see them now more clearly than before. The bonefire's light has strengthened, and by its flickering illumination I can see the forms that press close to the tables of food. They are not solid, they shimmer and fade, present one moment and ghost faint the next, but they are present, they are real. I see my grandfather. I recognize him despite the translucence of his form, despite the way his edges blur and shift. He stands before the table, reaching toward the food with hands that look more like memory than flesh. He picks up bread, or appears to, and brings it to his mouth, and though I see no bite taken, the bread seems somehow diminished after he releases it. Around me, others are seeing their dead as well. A woman gasps and reaches toward empty air, speaking rapidly in a voice thick with tears. "Mother, Mother, you have come back to me." She's reaching for something I cannot see, but her hands move as if touching a face, as if embracing someone who exists just beyond the edge of my perception. An old man stands frozen, staring at a space before him, tears streaming down his weathered face. "My son," he whispers, "my boy, you have come home." He reaches out tentatively, and his hand passes through something and he gasps as if feeling a cold that goes beyond mere temperature. My grandmother is speaking to the air beside her, her voice tender, her ancient face transformed by joy and grief combined. "Yes, my love. Yes, I am well. Yes, the children are strong. Yes, I've missed you every day." She's having a conversation with someone I cannot see, responding to words I cannot hear, but her side of the dialogue makes it clear that something is present. Something is communicating with her. Food is disappearing from the tables. Not quickly, not obviously, but the portions are diminishing. Bread grows smaller. Meat vanishes piece by piece. Cups of mead drain slowly, as if being sipped by invisible mouths. The dead are feasting. The dead are taking what we offer. The dead are accepting our hospitality. But not all the dead are friendly. At the edge of my vision, I see movement that is wrong. A figure that does not shimmer gently like the others, but flickers and jerks, moving with a violence that speaks of rage or madness. It approaches a young woman in the crowd and she backs away, her face going white with terror. "No," she whispers. "No, stay away. You have no claim on me." But the figure keeps coming, reaching for her with hands that look more like claws. She screams, and several men rush to her aid, placing themselves between her and the thing that pursues her. They hold up rowan branches, speak protective words, and the figure recoils, hissing in anger before fading back into the darkness beyond the firelight. "Some dead do not rest easy," my grandmother murmurs beside me. "Some carry grudges beyond death. Some hunger for more than food and drink. They hunger for life itself, and they would take it if they could." As if summoned by her words, I feel something cold pass behind me. I turn and see a shape, barely visible, more shadow than form, sliding between the gathered people. It moves with purpose, searching, hunting. Its attention fixes on an old woman near the edge of the crowd, and I see recognition and terror bloom in her face. "Declan," she gasps, "but you died angry with me. You cursed me as you died." The shape moves closer to her, and the temperature around us drops so sharply that our breath mists in the air. The woman backs away, clutching a rowan branch to her chest, speaking prayers in a voice that shakes with fear. Druids notice the confrontation and move to intervene. They surround the old woman, creating a barrier of sacred symbols and protective chants. The shape withdraws, but I can see it watching from the darkness, patient and malevolent, waiting for an opportunity. "This is why we make offerings," my father says quietly, "why we honor even those who might wish us harm. Better to give them food and acknowledgement than to have them seek revenge for being forgotten." The communion continues. All around the hilltop, the living and the dead interact in ways that defy explanation. I see a child laughing and playing with something invisible, throwing a ball that seems to be caught and thrown back by no one I can see. I see a warrior speaking with grim intensity to empty air, receiving counsel or forgiveness, or perhaps simply sharing memories with a comrade who fell in battle. I see my mother weeping as she reaches for the daughter she lost, her hands moving as if cradling an infant, her voice soft with the lullabies she never got to sing enough times. Whether the dead infant is truly there or whether my mother's grief simply makes her seem present, I cannot say. But the comfort my mother finds is real, and perhaps that is enough. The tables of food are nearly empty now. What the dead have not consumed has been deliberately left for them. The Druids instruct us not to touch what remains, for it belongs to the other world now, and to eat of it would be to invite death or madness. But something else is happening. The dead are not merely taking from the tables, they're communicating. Those who can see them, and it seems different people have different capacities for this vision, are receiving messages. Warnings. Prophecies. Final words that were left unspoken in life. A young man suddenly cries out, "He says the eastern border. He says raiders will come from the eastern border before winter ends. He says we must prepare." The young man is staring at something only he can see, listening intently, then relaying what he hears to those around him. An old woman speaks in a voice not quite her own, her eyes unfocused, her body swaying. 3 more will die before spring, 1 from the cold, 1 from the wasting sickness, 1 from violence that could be avoided if pride did not rule hearts. She collapses after speaking, and others rush to catch her, to comfort her, to help her recover from whatever has just passed through her. A child points at the darkness beyond the fire and screams, "The puka! The puka is there!" And indeed, at the very edge of firelight I see it, the massive black horse with eyes like coals, watching us with an intelligence that is not animal, waiting with the patience of something that exists outside human time. My grandmother's hand finds mine in the darkness, and I realize I'm shaking. "This is Samhain," she says softly. "This is the night when all boundaries fail, when the dead walk, when the other world and our world occupy the same space. What you're seeing, what you're feeling, this is real. As real as the fire, as real as the stones beneath your feet. Never forget it. Never dismiss it as fantasy or fever dream. This is the truth of our world, the truth that modern men will one day deny, the truth that makes Halloween possible." I want to ask her what she means by modern men, but before I can speak, something happens that makes all questions flee from my mind. At the center of the circle, near the bonfire, a woman begins to scream. Not the scream of fear, but something else. The scream of someone whose mind is breaking under pressure too great to bear. She's pointing at something in the fire, something I cannot see at first, her voice rising to a pitch that makes my ears ring. "There, in the flames, I see them. I see their faces. Gareth, Kiara, Fiacra. They are there in the fire, and they are... Oh gods, they are not at peace. They are not at rest. They are trapped in the flames, burning forever, screaming without sound." Druids rush to her, try to calm her, but she fights them off with manic strength. "Don't you see them? Don't you see them burning? We did this. We sent them there. The gods did not accept them. They are trapped between worlds, burning for eternity, and it is our fault." She breaks free from the Druids and runs toward the fire, and I realize with horror what she intends. She's going to throw herself into the flames, either from madness or from guilt or from some vision that has shattered her sanity. But she never reaches the fire. Something invisible strikes her. I see her body jerk as if hit by a great force, and she flies backward, landing hard on the stone. She does not move after that, and when Druids reach her, I hear them pronounce her dead. Her heart has stopped, killed by whatever force struck her down. "The other world has claimed her," Cathbad announces grimly. "She saw too much. She looked too deeply into what should not be seen. Let this be a warning. The dead may commune with us tonight. But there are boundaries even on Samhain that must not be crossed. Look not too deeply into the flames. Seek not to pierce the veil beyond what is given. Accept what the dead offer, but do not grasp for more." The woman's body is carried away, and the ceremonies continue, but a chill has settled over the gathering that has nothing to do with temperature. One of our own has died, killed not by violence or disease, but by seeing something she should not have seen, by understanding something the human mind was not meant to comprehend. The dead are still among us, still feasting, still communicating with those who can perceive them. But I find myself deliberately not looking too closely, not trying too hard to see. Some knowledge, I am learning, comes with a price too high to pay. My grandfather's form fades slowly as dawn approaches. I watch him disappear, becoming more transparent with each passing moment until he is gone completely, returned to whatever realm the dead inhabit when they are not walking among us. All around the hilltop, the dead are withdrawing. The other world is closing. The veil is thickening again. What has been possible for this night is becoming impossible once more. The communion is ending. We have honoured our dead. We have fed them. We have listened to their warnings and received their blessings. And we have learned once again that there are forces in this world beyond human comprehension. Powers that allow us to live only as long as we pay the proper tribute and observe the proper rituals. The food that remains on the tables is gathered by Druids and thrown into the bonfire. It belongs to the other world now and must be consumed by flame. The cups and plates are broken and the pieces scattered. They have been touched by the dead and must not be used by the living. As the last of the dead fade from perception, as the other world withdraws and normal reality reasserts itself, I feel something like exhaustion wash over me. I have witnessed sacrifice. I have communed with the dead. I have seen the veil fall and rise again, and I am still alive, still sane, still capable of standing on my own feet. But I am not unchanged. I will never be unchanged again. Samhain night is not over yet. There are more ceremonies to come, but the worst, I hope, is behind us. The dead are departing, dawn is approaching, and somehow, impossibly, we have survived. Chapter 10. The Shapeshifters. As the last of our honoured dead fade back into the other world, as their forms become transparent and then invisible, the atmosphere on the hilltop shifts again. The communion with the dead has ended, but Samhain night is far from over. The veil remains thin, thinner than at any other time of year, and while our ancestors have withdrawn with relative peace, other things still walk in the darkness beyond the bonefire's light. The Druids begin a new chant, this one with a rhythm that makes my blood quicken, that speaks to something primal and ancient in human consciousness. It is a chant of transformation, of becoming, of crossing boundaries between one state and another, and as they chant they begin to change. From behind the bonfire, younger Druids bring forth bundles wrapped in leather. These are open to reveal animal skins and heads, bear and wolf, stag and boar, raven and eagle. The skins are old, preserved through methods I do not understand, and they carry about them an air of power and danger. The 12 Druids each take a skin and head, and they begin to don them with ritual precision. This is not merely putting on a costume, this is something more, something that makes the hair on my neck stand on end. As each Druid wraps himself in animal skin and places the animal head over his own, something happens. A shimmer in the air, a sense of reality bending in ways it should not bend. Cathbad takes the bear skin and head, and as he settles it over himself, I swear I see him grow larger, see his movements become more ponderous and powerful. The other Druids take their forms, wolves that move with predatory grace, a stag whose antlers seem to multiply in the firelight, a boar whose tusks gleam like bronze blades. They begin to dance around the bonfire, and their movements are not human. They move as animals move, with a fluidity and power that seems impossible from human bodies. The bear Druid rises on hind legs and roars, and the sound that comes forth is not human voice disguised, but genuine bear roar that makes every person in the gathering take an involuntary step backward. The wolf Druids circle the fire in a pack, their movements perfectly coordinated, their attention fixed on the gathered crowd with an intensity that speaks of genuine predation. The stag Druid leaps impossibly high, his movements graceful and inhuman. The raven Druids seem almost to fly, their arms spread like wings, their heads turning with the sharp, jerking movements of birds. This is not performance. This is not men pretending to be animals. This is transformation, a becoming of something between human and beast, a crossing of boundaries that should not be crossable. The Druids have become sacred shapeshifters, embodying the spirits of these animals, channeling their power and their essence. They show us what walks tonight, my grandmother whispers beside me. The between things, the neither human nor animal, the shapeshifters who move in the wild places, who exist in the spaces between definitions. On Samhain, when all boundaries fail, these things walk freely. As if summoned by her words, I see movement at the edge of the firelight. Not the Druids in their animal forms, but something else. Something that was not there moments before, but is present now, drawn perhaps by the Druids' transformation, or perhaps simply taking advantage of the thinned veil to cross into our world. A horse emerges from the darkness, but wrong. Too large, too black, its proportions subtly incorrect in ways that make my eyes hurt to track. Its eyes glow red like the coals of the bone fire, and when it moves, the movement is liquid and unnatural, as if it is not quite bound by the laws that govern physical form. The puka. My grandmother's stories made flesh, or whatever passes for flesh in such a creature. It walks among the gathered people, and where it passes we shrink away, pressing against each other, making ourselves small. Because everyone knows the stories. To touch the puka on Samhain means death or abduction to the other world. To meet its gaze is to invite madness. To acknowledge it is to give it power over you. It moves through the crowd slowly, deliberately, as if searching for something or someone. Its breath mists in the cold air, and the mist is tinged with colours that should not exist, greens and purples that hurt to look at directly. Where its hooves strike stone, I see sparks that fall upward rather than down, defying nature itself. A man drunk on mead or courage or madness steps forward. "I am not afraid of you," he shouts at the puka. "You are just a horse, just an animal. I have tamed horses. I have broken them to my will." "No!" my father hisses. "Do not!" But it is too late. The man reaches out toward the pusa, reaching to grasp its mane, to prove his courage or his stupidity, or perhaps both. His hand makes contact with the creature's neck, and the puka transforms. It happens so quickly that I cannot track the change. One moment it is a horse. Wrong, yes, but still fundamentally horse-shaped. The next moment it is something else entirely, something my mind refuses to properly see or remember. Too many limbs, too many joints. A mouth that opens in ways mouths should not open. Eyes that multiply across its surface like spreading disease. The man who touched it screams once, a sound of pure, distilled terror, and then he is gone. Not dead, not collapsed, but gone. Vanished as completely as if he had never existed. The space where he stood is empty, and the pusa, returned to horse form now, looks around at us with what might be satisfaction, or might be amusement. Then it turns and walks back into the darkness beyond the firelight, and we let it go, because what else can we do? "Mark his name," Cathbad calls out. "He's claimed by the other world. If he returns, and he may, for the puka sometimes releases what it takes, he will not be the same. He will have seen things no living person should see. He will carry the other world within him for whatever remains of his life." The dancing druids continue their movements, and now I notice other shapes moving at the edge of firelight. More things crossing over while the veil is thin, more entities that exist in the spaces between human and animal, between living and dead, between our world and the other world. I see a woman run past me, and for just a moment, her head is not human but corvid, a crow or raven, I cannot tell which. Her eyes are black and empty, and when she opens her mouth, the sound that emerges is a caw that makes my blood run cold. Then she's past me, and I cannot tell if she was one of our people transformed or something from outside wearing human shape. A child laughs somewhere in the darkness, but the laugh is wrong. Too deep, too knowing, too old for any child's throat. The sound bounces off the stones around us, coming from multiple directions at once, and I realize the thing that made that sound is circling us, studying us, considering us with an intelligence that is not human. Things shimmer at the boundary between firelight and darkness. Forms that might be human, or might be deer, or might be neither, or might be both. The boundaries are not merely thin, they are gone. Our world and the other world occupy the same space, and we are surrounded by things that should not exist. My father presses a piece of iron into my hand, a nail or a knife blade, I cannot tell in the darkness. "Hold this," he says urgently. "If anything approaches you that feels wrong, that looks wrong, hold out the iron. It will repel most of them. Most, but not all." I clutch the iron until my hand aches, feeling its cold solidity, its realness. Iron is of the earth, of human craft and labour. It is inimical to the other world, burns the things that dwell there. It is one of the few protections we have against what walks tonight. The Druids' dance becomes more frantic, more wild. They are not merely wearing animal skins now, they have become something else entirely. The distinction between druid and animal has blurred beyond recognition. They move in ways that seem impossible, their bodies bending and stretching, their shadows cast by the bonfire distorted into shapes that make no sense. And then I see it. Standing at the very edge of the firelight, just beyond the chalk boundary the Druids drew earlier, a figure that is man-shaped but wrong in every particular. Too tall, too thin, its proportions grotesque. It wears armour that looks like shadow given form, and where its head should be, there is nothing. No head at all, just empty space above the collar, the Dullahan. The headless horseman who appears before death, who rides to claim those marked for the grave. It does not move, it simply stands there watching, though how it watches without head or eyes I cannot say. But I feel its attention like weight, like pressure, like being studied by something that understands death in ways we cannot. Around me, people have noticed it. Murmurs spread through the crowd, and the murmurs become prayers, become protective charms, become desperate invocations of gods and goddesses to ward off this herald of death. The Dullahan raises one arm, moving with a deliberation that suggests ritual rather than mere gesture, and points. Not at the crowd in general, but at someone specific. I follow the direction of its pointing and see an old man standing alone, his face gone white with terror. "Tadg," someone whispers. "It points at Tadg. He is marked." The old man, Tadg, collapses to his knees, his hands raised in supplication. "No," he begs. "Please, not yet. I'm not ready. My children still need me. Please." But the Dullahan does not respond. It lowers its arm, turns, and walks back into the darkness. It has delivered its message. Death is coming for Tadg, perhaps within days, perhaps within hours. The Dullahan does not lie. Those it marks will die. Druids rush to Tadg, surround him with protective symbols, speak prayers over him, but I can see in their faces that they do not expect their efforts to succeed. When the Dullahan marks someone, that person's fate is sealed. They might delay death, might bargain with it, but they cannot escape it. More shapes move in the darkness. I see things that might be wolves but walk on two legs. I see birds that are too large, their wings spanning distances that should not be possible. I see a cat that pauses at the edge of firelight, and its eyes are not cat eyes but something else, ancient and knowing and full of malice. Beside me, my sister Ain screams and points at something I cannot see. "It has grandmother's face," she shrieks, "but it's not her. It's wearing her face like a mask." My grandmother pulls Ain close, speaking soothing words. And I wonder what my sister saw. One of the Aussie, perhaps, wearing a stolen face or a fetch. A spirit that takes the form of someone we know to lure us to our doom. The shape-shifting continues. The boundaries continue to blur. Human and animal, living and dead, our world and the other world, all mixing, all bleeding into each other, creating a reality where nothing is certain, where anything might be other than it appears, where even our own perceptions cannot be trusted. The Druids finally slow their dance, their movements becoming less frantic, more controlled. As they slow, they begin to remove their animal skins and heads, carefully, ritually, speaking words that I do not understand but that feel like bindings, like anchors, like attempts to reassert the boundaries that have dissolved. As each Druid removes his animal form, he staggers slightly as if returning from a long journey, as if crossing back from somewhere distant and difficult. Their faces are pale, marked with strain, and I realize that what they did, becoming something between human and animal, came at a cost. They walked in the spaces between, and returning from those spaces is not easy. "The shapeshifters have shown themselves," Cathbad announces, his voice hoarse from exertion and transformation. "We have witnessed the between things, the neither and both, the beings who walk when boundaries fail. Remember what you have seen. Remember that the world is stranger and more terrible than daylight allows you to believe. And remember that on Samhain, we come close to the edge of chaos, the place where form itself becomes unstable." He pauses, gathering breath. "But we survive. We witness. We remember. And by witnessing and remembering, we maintain what boundaries can be maintained. The shapeshifters will return to their places. The between things will withdraw. Dawn approaches, and with dawn comes the re-establishment of order. I look toward the eastern horizon and see that he is right. The sky is lightening, not with the grey of false dawn, but with the first true hints of sunrise. We have been on this hilltop for hours, though time has become strange and difficult to track. We have witnessed sacrifice and communion with the dead and the walking of shapeshifters, and somehow, impossibly, we have survived. But Samhain night is not over yet. There are more ceremonies to come, more trials to endure, and the things that walk in darkness are not yet ready to withdraw fully. They press close still, taking advantage of the thinned veil, claiming what they can claim before the dawn forces them back into the other world. I clutch my piece of iron tighter and pray to gods I am no longer certain I understand or trust. I pray for dawn. I pray for survival. I pray that when the sun finally rises, I will still be human, still be sane, still be capable of living in the world of light rather than trapped forever in this nightmare realm where nothing is what it seems and death wears 1,000 faces. The shapeshifters dance their final dance. The between things prowl at the edge of perception, and we wait for dawn with the desperate patience of people who know that morning might never come, that we might be trapped in this eternal night of transformation and horror and boundaries that refuse to hold. But we wait, because waiting is all we can do, because we are human and humans endure, because this is Samhain, and endurance is the price we pay for survival. Chapter 11. Divination and Prophecy. As the shapeshifters complete their final transformations and the between things withdraw slightly with the approaching dawn, the Druids gather us for what might be the strangest ceremony of this already impossible night. The bonfire still burns strong, fed continuously by attendants who throw sacred woods and bones onto its flames. By its light, I can see the exhaustion on every face. We have been here for hours, witnessing horrors and wonders, and we are all approaching the limits of what human endurance can sustain. But the Druids show no sign of fatigue. If anything, they seem more energized now. Their eyes bright with something that might be ecstasy or madness, or perhaps both. They move with purpose, arranging items around the fire, preparing for ceremonies that will reveal what the coming year holds. Samhain is the hinge of the year, Cathbad announces, his voice carrying clearly despite the crackling flames. The moment when one year dies and another is born. At this threshold, at this boundary between past and future, the veil thins not only between worlds, but between times. What has been and what will be occupy the same space. Tonight the future can be seen more clearly than at any other time. Tonight we perform divination. Younger druids bring forth baskets filled with hazelnuts. These are distributed through the crowd. Each person receives 3 nuts, carefully selected, each one representing an aspect of the coming year. My father explains in a whisper, 1 nut for your personal fate, 1 for your family's fate, 1 for the tribe's fate. When I call upon you, Cathbad instructs, you will throw your nuts into the bonfire. Watch how they burn. If they burn quietly, peacefully, the coming year will be calm. If they pop and crack, violence is coming. If they explode, catastrophe awaits. And if they refuse to burn at all? He pauses ominously. Then the other world has already claimed you, and you are marked for death within the year. A chill runs through the gathered crowd. We clutch our hazelnuts, feeling their weight, their solidity, trying not to imagine them exploding in the flames, trying not to think about what such an explosion might mean. The ceremony begins. The Druids call people forward in groups, and they approach the bonfire nervously, holding out their nuts like offerings to angry gods. I watch as a woman throws her 3 nuts into the flames. 2 burn quietly, but the third, the one representing her personal fate, pops loudly and she gasps, her hand flying to her mouth. Violence comes to you, a druid intones. Not death, but pain. Injury or betrayal or loss. Prepare yourself. She stumbles back to her place in the crowd, and I see her husband put his arm around her, both of them pale with dread. More people approach. Some nuts burn quietly. Others crack and pop with varying intensity. One man's nut explodes so violently that pieces of shell fly from the fire, and the Druids pronounce that catastrophe will strike his household before spring. He collapses, weeping, and must be carried away. Then my family is called forward. My father goes first, throwing his 3 nuts with a steady hand despite the fear I can see in his eyes. The first 2 burn quietly. His personal fate and our family's fate are peaceful. But the third, representing the tribe, cracks loudly 3 times. Violence comes to the tribe, the Druid announces. Raiders or war or internal conflict. Blood will be spilled before winter ends. My mother's nuts all burn quietly, and the relief on her face is visible. My grandmother's nuts also burn peacefully, though one smoulders for a long time before finally catching, which the Druids interpret as a delay. Whatever is coming for her will not arrive quickly. Then it is my turn. I step forward on legs that threaten to buckle beneath me, holding my 3 precious hazelnuts. I approach the bonfire, feeling its heat on my face, smelling the complex scent of burning bones and woods, and the residual odour of burned human flesh that will never completely leave this place. I throw my nuts into the flames and watch with held breath. The first nut, my personal fate, catches immediately and burns with a bright hot flame. But it does not burn quietly. It pops once, twice, 3 times, 4, each pop like a small explosion, each one making me flinch. Violence and transformation, the Druid says, studying the burning nut. Your path ahead is not peaceful. You will face trials that will change you, but the flame burns bright. You will survive, but you will not be unchanged. The second nut, my family's fate, burns more quietly, though I see it split in 2 as it burns, which apparently signifies division or separation. The Druid nods thoughtfully but does not elaborate. The third nut, the tribe's fate, explodes. Not a pop or a crack, but a genuine explosion that sends burning fragments flying. One piece lands near my foot, still burning, and I step back quickly. The gathered crowd gasps. The Druids exchange glances, their expressions grave. Catastrophe, Cathbad himself pronounces, stepping forward. Great upheaval comes to our people within the year. Change that cannot be avoided. Destruction that will remake us. The tribe that survives the coming storm will not be the tribe that exists today. I stumble back to my family, my hands shaking, and my father grips my shoulder hard enough to hurt. We have been given a glimpse of the future, and it is dark. The nut divination continues, but now more ceremonies begin simultaneously. Tables are brought forth, and on them are placed apples, lead, mirrors, and other items used for different forms of divination. The apple speaks of fate and fortune, a Druid announces, holding up an apple and a knife. Cut it crosswise, and the seeds within will show patterns that reveal what awaits you. People line up for this divination. I watch as a woman cuts her apple, revealing 5 seeds arranged in a star pattern. Travel, the Druid reading the signs announces, a journey across water. Whether you return depends on choices not yet made. A man cuts his apple to reveal seeds arranged in a line. Straight path, the Druid says. Your fate is set. No choices remain. Walk forward and accept what comes. Another woman cuts her apple and reveals seeds arranged in a pattern that makes the Druids exchange troubled glances. Chaos, they finally pronounce. The unwritten future. Too many paths, too many possibilities. You stand at a crossroads where any choice might lead anywhere. May the gods guide you. My grandmother takes an apple and cuts it herself, her ancient hands steady on the bronze knife. The seeds within form a perfect circle, 5 of them, evenly spaced. The wheel, the Druid says with respect in his voice, the cycle complete. You have lived your full measure. What comes next is return to the beginning. This is your last Samhain as a living woman. My grandmother nods calmly, as if she has known this for some time. My mother begins to weep, but my grandmother shushes her gently. We all return to the earth eventually, she says. Better to know when, to prepare, to make peace. At another station, lead is being melted in a small crucible held over the bonefire's heat. When the lead is liquid, it is poured into cold water, and the shape it forms is read as prophecy. I watch as a young woman's lead forms the clear shape of a child. You will bear a son before next Samhain, the Druid tells her, and she gasps with joy, her hand flying to her belly as if she might already feel life there. A warrior's lead forms a blade shape. You will face combat, he is told. Whether you survive depends on how you meet it, with courage or with fear, with honor or with desperation. An old man's lead forms a perfect circle with a gap in one side. Your circle nears completion, the Druid says gently, but there is yet a small opening, a brief time remaining. Make peace, say farewells, prepare for your journey. The old man, not Tadk, who was marked by the Dullahan but another, accepts this calmly. nodding as if receiving confirmation of what he already suspected. My lead, when I work up the courage to pour it, forms a shape I cannot interpret. It looks like branches, or perhaps like lightning, spreading out in multiple directions from a central point. The Druid studies it for a long time before speaking. Divergence, he finally says. Your life splits into many possible paths from this point. The choices you make in the coming year will echo through the rest of your days. Choose wisely, choose carefully, for you stand at a moment when small decisions have vast consequences. I do not know whether to be relieved or more frightened by this ambiguous prophecy. The most dramatic divination is reserved for the young and unmarried. The mirror ritual, a bronze mirror, polished to a high shine, is positioned near the bone fire. At the stroke of midnight, and we are close to that hour now, unmarried young people may gaze into the mirror by firelight and see visions of their future. If you are fated to marry, the Druid explains, you may see the face of your future spouse. If you are fated to remain alone, you will see only your own reflection. But if you are fated to die unwed, he pauses gravely, you will see a skull. Several young people brave this divination. A young man looks into the mirror and smiles. Apparently he sees someone he hopes to see. A young woman looks and frowns, then laughs, perhaps seeing someone unexpected but not unwelcome. Then a girl I know slightly, Maeve, daughter of our blacksmith, steps up to the mirror. She's perhaps 16, pretty and popular, with several young men courting her. She gazes into the mirror with confidence. And she screams. It is a scream of pure distilled terror, the kind of scream that bypasses thought and emerges directly from the soul. She backs away from the mirror, her hands raised as if to ward off attack, her eyes wide and wild. "Skull!" she gasps. "I saw a skull, my own face became a skull." She turns and runs into the darkness beyond the firelight, and several people give chase. We hear her screaming somewhere out there, her voice growing more distant, more frantic, until suddenly it cuts off entirely. The silence that follows is terrible. After several minutes, the pursuers return, carrying her body. She is dead. Her heart has stopped. Her face is frozen in an expression of absolute terror. The other world has claimed her, Cathbad pronounces. She saw her death, and the seeing itself killed her. This is why we warn against looking too deeply, against seeking knowledge that the mind cannot bear. The mirror divination ends. No one else volunteers. As these various divinations continue, the Druids are also reading the ashes from the bone fire, examining the patterns left by burned bones, interpreting shapes and symbols that ordinary eyes cannot perceive. They announce their findings to the gathered crowd. The winter will be harsh, they proclaim, colder than most years, longer. The spring will come late. 3 will die before winter ends. We have seen this in multiple signs. A child will be born with the sight, the ability to see what others cannot. This child will be both blessing and burden to the tribe. Raiders will come from the east before the snow melts, prepare defenses, store weapons, choose watchmen. A woman will betray her husband, and the betrayal will lead to bloodshed. The harvest next autumn will be poor. Begin rationing now. Make stores last. Each prophecy is recorded by scribes who mark them on pieces of bark using charcoal, creating a record that will be kept and verified as the year unfolds. These are not vague predictions, but specific, testable claims that the Druids stake their reputation and authority upon. And history, my own experience over the coming year, will prove them terrifyingly accurate. As dawn approaches more clearly now, the eastern sky showing definite grey, the divination ceremonies wind down. We have been given glimpses of the future, and what we have seen is mostly dark. Violence, death, hardship, transformation. The coming year will not be easy, but perhaps that is always the case. Perhaps the future is always frightening to those who can see it clearly. Perhaps ignorance of what awaits us is a mercy, and these ceremonies, however sacred, however traditional, are themselves a form of curse, burdening us with knowledge of suffering we cannot prevent. I stand with my family, clutching the knowledge that violence and transformation await me, that my life will split into divergent paths, that nothing will be certain or safe. Around me, others clutch their own dark prophecies, their own glimpses of futures they would prefer not to see. The Druids declare the divination complete. We have seen what can be seen. The future has spoken, and now only one ceremony remains, the personal offerings to the bonfire, the individual prayers and wishes, the final petitions before dawn breaks and Samhain night ends. I am exhausted beyond measure. My mind feels stretched thin, my emotions raw and exposed. I have witnessed horrors and wonders, have seen the dead walk and shapeshifters transform, have received prophecies that promise suffering ahead. But I am still alive, still standing, still capable of offering my own prayer to whatever gods or powers might be listening. And so, when the Druids call us forward to make our final offerings, I step toward the bonfire once more, ready to complete this longest and darkest of nights. Chapter 12. The gazing begins. As the divination ceremonies conclude and the first real light of dawn begins to strengthen in the east, the atmosphere shifts once more. What has been solemn and terrifying takes on a strange, almost manic quality. The exhaustion that grips us all transforms into something else, a giddiness born of having survived, a desperate need to laugh in the face of death, to mock the darkness that has surrounded us all night. The Druids announce the beginning of guising, the ancient practice of disguise that will, millennia from now, evolve into the costumes children wear on Halloween. But here, now, it is nothing so innocent. It is survival strategy and sacred mockery combined, a way to confuse the spirits that still walk among us and to demonstrate our defiance of death itself. From bundles that have been kept near the bonfire, people begin to retrieve masks and costumes they prepared in the days before Samhain. Some are simple, pieces of cloth wrapped around faces, straw woven into crude headpieces. Others are elaborate, animal hides sewn into full-body costumes, masks carved from wood and painted with ochre and charcoal, headdresses made from antlers and bones and feathers. My father unwraps our family's guising materials. For himself, a mask carved from ash wood, painted white with black circles for eyes, a death mask, making him look like a walking corpse. For my mother, a cloak made from raven feathers, with a beaked mask that transforms her into a bird woman. For my grandmother, surprisingly, nothing. She refuses to disguise herself, saying that at her age, with death approaching, there is no point in hiding from what will find her regardless. For me, my father presents a mask made from sheepskin, the wool still attached, with eye holes cut through and the snout left intact. When I put it on, my vision narrows. My breath comes hot against my own face, and I can smell the lanolin and the animal scent still clinging to the hide. I feel myself becoming something else, not quite human, not quite sheep, something between. All around the hilltop, similar transformations are occurring. Hundreds of people donning masks and costumes, becoming other than themselves. I see wolves and bears, deer and boars. I see demons and spirits, representations of the Ios Sea with their beautiful, terrible faces. I see living corpses and skeletal figures, mockeries of death designed to confuse death itself. The effect is disorienting and strangely liberating. Behind my mask, I am not Brennan. I am not the young man who watched 3 people burn. I am something else, something free from identity and history and the weight of what I have witnessed. I am anonymous, hidden, transformed. The Druids approve of this transformation. Cathbad himself, now wearing a mask that makes him look like some ancient tree spirit, his face bark-like and inhuman, addresses the crowd. You disguise yourselves for protection and for power. The harmful spirits that walk this night seek specific individuals, seek to settle scores and claim debts. But if you are not yourself, if you're hidden behind mask and costume, they cannot find you. You slip through their grasp like water through fingers. He pauses, letting his words sink in. But disguise is not merely defense, it is also defiance. By transforming ourselves, by taking on the shapes of animals and spirits and death itself, we mock the powers that threaten us. We show that we are not helpless, not merely victims waiting to be claimed. We can be anything. We can transform ourselves, and in that transformation we find freedom from fear. A strange energy runs through the crowd now. People begin to move, to dance, to make sounds, animal noises, spirit wails, death rattles. It starts tentatively, self-consciously, but builds rapidly into something wild and uninhibited. My father, transformed by his death mask into a walking corpse, begins to move through the crowd with arms outstretched, moaning and reaching for people. It should be silly, childish even, but in the context of this night, after everything we have witnessed, it carries genuine unsettling power. People laugh nervously and dodge away from him, playing along with the game but also genuinely disturbed. My mother in her raven cloak spreads her arms and makes cawing sounds, hopping and pecking at the air. Other bird people join her, and soon there is a flock of human ravens circling the bone fire, their movements coordinated in ways that seem impossible without rehearsal. I find myself moving with them, swept up in the strange energy. Behind my sheepskin mask, I feel brave in ways I did not before. I approach people making bleating sounds and they laugh or shrink away, and both reactions feel like victory. I am not myself. I am other, and otherness is freedom. Groups begin to form, packs of wolves moving together, herds of deer, flocks of birds. These groups move through the crowd performing tricks and games. The wolf pack surrounds someone and hunts them until they perform a trick, or recite a poem, or sing a song. The bird flock descends on people demanding offerings of food, cackling and pecking playfully until they receive what they seek. The deer people, of which I become one, joining others wearing antlers and hides, form a line and process around the bonfire, moving with exaggerated prancing steps, our heads held high, our movements deliberately graceful and inhuman. People watch us and clap in rhythm with our steps, and the clapping becomes drumming as someone produces an actual drum, and soon there is music. Drums and pipes appear from nowhere, and the music that results is wild and primal. It has rhythm but not melody, as we would normally understand it, more like heartbeat and breath, and the sounds of the forest-given structure. The disguised people dance to this music, and the dancing is nothing like the formal movements I've seen at festivals and celebrations. This is raw, uninhibited movement, bodies giving into rhythm, masks and costumes making everyone anonymous and therefore free. I dance until my legs ache, until sweat pours down my face inside the sheepskin mask, until I forget that I am tired, forget that I am frightened, forget everything except the immediate moment of movement and music and transformation. Some of the geysers carry carved turnips lit from within by candles taken from the bonfire. These glowing demonic faces bob through the crowd like will-o-wisps, their light casting strange shadows, making the night seem populated by hundreds more spirits than are actually present. The effect is both beautiful and unnerving, a constellation of grotesque faces floating in the darkness, grinning and grimacing and watching with hollow eyes. The game becomes more elaborate. Groups of geysers begin to move from family group to family group, performing tricks or reciting verses, demanding food and drink in exchange. This is not mere begging, it is ritual exchange, a way of redistributing resources and strengthening community bonds. The families give willingly, even eagerly perhaps, because giving to the disguised geysers is like giving to the spirits themselves, purchasing favor and protection. I find myself part of a group approaching an elderly couple. We surround them, making our animal sounds, and one of our number, a man wearing a boar's head that makes him look genuinely fearsome, demands in a growling voice, "Give us your finest food, or we shall haunt your dreams until spring." The old couple laughs nervously and produces dried meat and bread, which we accept with elaborate thanks, breaking character to speak words of genuine gratitude before moving to the next group. This continues as dawn strengthens. The sky is definitely lighter now. We have passed from night into that liminal time that is neither night nor day, neither darkness nor light. The bonfire still burns, but its light is less necessary now, less dominant. The guising takes on different forms. Some people perform elaborate skits, acting out stories of heroes and monsters, of gods and mortals. Others engage in mock battles, wolf people fighting bear people in choreographed combat that looks almost real in the uncertain light. I watch a group perform what seems to be the story of creation. One person representing the earth, another the sky, others the first humans emerging from darkness into light. It is primitive theatre, performed without script or rehearsal, but it carries power nonetheless. This is how our people remember their history, their mythology. Not through written words, but through performance and repetition, through embodied knowledge passed from generation to generation. My father finds me in the crowd, I recognize him despite his mask, by his walk, by the way he moves. "This is important," he says, his voice muffled by the death mask. "What we do now, the disguises, the mockery, the laughter, this is how we survive. We have witnessed horror, we have seen death, but we do not let it break us. We transform it. We make it into something we can live with. We laugh at death because laughter robs it of absolute power over us." I understand what he means. After hours of terror and solemnity, after watching people burn and communing with the dead and witnessing shapeshifters, this wild, chaotic guising is necessary. It is pressure release. It is collective therapy. It is humanity asserting itself against forces that would reduce us to cowering animals. But there is more to it than that. The guising is not just performance for ourselves. The spirits still walk among us. The veil is still thin, though thickening as dawn approaches. And the disguises serve their original purpose as well. They confuse the spirits, make it difficult for harmful entities to identify specific individuals. I see evidence of this as a shape moves through the crowd, something that is not human, not quite. Its movements wrong in subtle ways. It pauses before each group of guisers, studying them, trying to see through their disguises. Most times it moves on, frustrated or confused. But once, it stops before someone and reaches out. The person it touches screams and collapses. The spirit, whatever it was, flees back into the darkness beyond the firelight. Druids rush to the fallen person, a young man who is still breathing but unconscious. They examine him and pronounce that his soul has been touched, that he may wake changed, may carry trauma that will last a lifetime. "This is why we disguise ourselves," Cathbad announces. "This is why we transform. The harmful spirits seek those who wronged them in life, seek to claim debts and exact revenge. But if you are not yourself, if you are hidden, you are safe. Mostly." The guising continues, but with renewed purpose now. This is not just play. This is survival strategy. Every mask, every costume, every transformation is armor against forces that would harm us. As dawn grows brighter, true dawn now, the sun approaching the eastern horizon though not yet visible, the energy begins to fade. We have been awake all night, have witnessed and experienced things that should have broken us. Exhaustion is claiming us, despite the manic energy of the guising. The music slows, the dancing becomes less frantic. People begin to remove their masks, returning to themselves, though I notice many keep their disguises partially in place, as if reluctant to fully surrender the freedom and protection anonymity provided. I remove my sheepskin mask and the cool morning air on my face is startling. I have been behind that mask for what feels like hours, have been not myself for so long that returning to myself feels strange, almost uncomfortable. My family gathers together, our masks removed or pushed back, and we stand in silence, watching the sky lighten. We have survived. We have survived the sacrifice, the communion with the dead, the shapeshifters, the divination, the guising. We have survived Samhain night, but the ceremonies are not quite finished. 2 more rituals remain, the personal offerings to the bonfire and the taking of the sacred flame back to our homes. These final acts will complete the cycle, will mark the true end of Samhain and the beginning of the new year. The Druids call us forward. It is time to make our personal offerings, to speak our individual prayers, to release what needs to be released, and to petition for what we hope to receive. I step toward the bonfire once more, preparing for the final ceremony of this longest, darkest, most terrible and transformative night of my life. The Chapter 13, Feeding the Flames. The bonfire has burned through the entire night, fed continuously by attendants who throw sacred woods and bones onto its flames. It burns lower now than at its height, but it still generates substantial heat, still casts significant light in the growing dawn. This fire has witnessed everything: the sacrifice, the communion, the shape-shifting, the divination, the guising. It has been the center, the axis, the sacred point around which all ceremonies have revolved. Now we approach it individually to make our personal offerings. The Druids have arranged the crowd into a rough line, and we wait our turn to approach the flames. This is not the communal sacrifice of earlier, but something more intimate, more personal. This is the moment when each individual speaks directly to the gods, the spirits, the powers that sustain existence. This is when we release what needs releasing and ask for what we need. People carry various items to burn, small carved figures representing things they wish to be rid of, pieces of cloth bearing symbols of diseases or bad luck, locks of hair cut specifically for this offering, even valuable items sacrificed to demonstrate the seriousness of their petitions. I watch as a woman approaches the fire carrying a wooden doll. This is my fear, she announces to the flames, to the Druids, to whatever powers might be listening. I release it. I burn it. I refuse to let it control me anymore. She throws the doll into the flames, and I see tears streaming down her face as she watches it catch and burn. When she returns to her place in the crowd, something in her expression has changed. Lightened, perhaps, or simply resolved. A warrior approaches, carrying a broken spear. This was my failure, he says. The weapon that broke when I needed it most, that led to my friend's death. I carry this guilt. I burn it now. I ask the gods to lift this weight from my soul. The spear goes into the flames, and he stands watching until it is completely consumed, his face a mask of grief and relief combined. An old woman approaches with a braided bracelet. This was his, she says, her voice trembling. My husband's. He is dead 2 years now, and I cannot let him go. I cannot move forward. I release him now. I release my grip on what was. I burn this link and ask the gods to help me find peace. The bracelet burns quickly and she sobs openly. But when she turns away from the fire, her shoulders seem lighter, as if she has truly released a burden. More offerings follow. A man burns a carving of a cow, praying that his herd survives the winter. A woman burns a piece of her wedding dress, releasing herself from a marriage to a man who beat her, asking the gods to free her from vows that have become chains. A child burns a doll, releasing some childhood fear I cannot identify, but that clearly weighs heavily upon them. Each offering is accompanied by words, sometimes prayers, sometimes confessions, sometimes simply names of what is being released or requested. And each offering is witnessed by the Druids, who occasionally add their own blessings or guidance, who serve as intermediaries between the mortal and divine. My turn approaches, and I realize I have not prepared anything specific to burn. In the chaos of the night, in the horror and wonder of everything I have witnessed, I forgot to think about this moment. What do I want to release? What do I need to ask for? I step forward empty-handed and a druid notices. He approaches me with understanding in his eyes. Sometimes, he says quietly, we don't know what we carry until the moment comes to set it down. Look within yourself. What weighs upon you? I close my eyes and search my feelings, my thoughts, my soul. What do I carry? And suddenly I know. I reach to my neck and remove the rowan wood pendant I have worn all night for protection. I hold it in my hands, feeling its weight, its texture, its significance. This wood has protected me through Samhain night, but it also represents my fear, my need for protection, my belief that I am vulnerable and weak. This is my fear, I say, my voice surprising myself with its strength. I have lived my whole life afraid of failing my father, afraid of being weak, afraid of the dark, afraid of death, afraid of not being man enough to face what life demands. I watched 3 people burn tonight. I saw the dead walk. I witnessed things that should have broken me. But I am still here. I am still standing. I am stronger than I believed. I hold the rowan wood over the flames. I release this fear. I release this need to hide behind charms and protections. I ask the gods to help me find the courage I need, not in external talismans, but within myself. I drop the rowan wood into the fire and watch it catch. It burns quickly, the wood dry and eager to be consumed. As it burns, I feel something shift inside me, subtle but real. I have named my fear and released it. I have made my declaration. And though fear will undoubtedly return, I am human, after all. I have marked this moment as the beginning of something different, something stronger. When I return to my family, my father grips my shoulder and nods. He understands. He has seen me transform tonight from boy to man, from child sheltered from horror to adult who has witnessed it and survived. My mother approaches the fire next. She carries a small cloth bundle, and when she opens it, I see it contains baby clothes, tiny garments that once belonged to my sister Neve, the infant who died. My mother has kept these clothes for years, unable to let them go, clinging to the physical remnants of a child who barely lived. I release you, my daughter, my mother says, her voice breaking. I release my grief. I release my guilt that I could not save you. I release my fear of losing another child. You are at peace. Let me find peace as well. She places the clothes in the flames and watches them burn, her face wet with tears but her expression determined. This is ending that needs ending. Grief that needs acknowledging and releasing rather than carrying forever. My father's offering is a knife, not his primary weapon, but a blade he has carried since he was young. This represents my youth, he says, my belief that I am still young, still strong, still capable of everything I once was. But I grow older. I must accept this. I burn the blade of youth and ask the gods to grant me the wisdom of age, the acceptance of limits, the grace to pass on leadership to the next generation. The blade goes into the flames, the wooden handle burning, the bronze melting and running like liquid fire. My grandmother, who earlier refused to wear a disguise, now approaches the fire. She carries nothing visible, but when she reaches the flames, she begins to remove jewellery, bronze rings, an amber necklace, a pin made of silver. These are valuable items, wealth by our standards. I release my attachment to this life, she says calmly. I release my possessions. I release my body, which grows frail and pained. The divination tonight confirmed what I already knew. My time is short. I do not fight this. I do not rage against it. I accept. I ask only for a death that is peaceful, that does not burden my family, that comes when I am ready. She places each item in the flames with deliberate care, watching them burn or melt, her face serene. Around us, hundreds of others are making similar offerings. The air is thick with prayers and petitions, with releases and requests, with the accumulated hopes and fears and needs of our entire community. The bonfire grows with each offering, fed by our cast-off burdens, sustained by our sacrifices, both physical and emotional. Some offerings are practical. A farmer burns a carving of a blight-eaten plant, praying for healthy crops next season. A mother burns cloth from a sickbed, releasing disease from her home. A hunter burns a broken arrow, asking for better fortune in the hunt. Others are more abstract. A young woman burns a letter she cannot read, written by someone she loved, causing pain she wants to release. A warrior burns a badge of rank, releasing pride that has caused conflict. An old man burns a piece of wood carved with names, releasing grudges held for decades against people probably long dead. The fire grows not just in size but in significance. It is becoming a repository for our collective pain, our shared burdens, our communal release. Every item burned is a prayer made physical, a petition given form, a release made tangible. The Druids move among us, blessing the offerings, adding their own petitions to ours, channeling the energy we are creating toward whatever divine or cosmic forces they serve. Their voices rise and fall in continuous chant, creating a backdrop of sacred sound that transforms individual offerings into collective ritual. As the offerings continue, as more and more items are fed to the flames, I feel something shift in the atmosphere. The fire is not just burning material objects, it is transforming energy, changing the spiritual landscape, creating space for new things to grow where old things have been released. This, I realize, is the true power of Samhain, not just the dramatic sacrifice of the Wicker man or the eerie communion with the dead, but this, hundreds of people simultaneously releasing what no longer serves them, making space for growth and change, marking the end of one cycle and the beginning of another. The offerings wind down as dawn grows stronger. The eastern horizon is bright now, the sun moments from appearing. The bonfire has been fed by our cast-off burdens, our sacrificed treasures, our released attachments. It burns high and hot, purified by these offerings, consecrated by our collective act of letting go. Cathbad raises his arms one final time. The offerings are complete, he announces. You have released what needed releasing. You have asked for what you need. The gods have heard. The spirits have witnessed. The fire has received your prayers. He pauses, and in that pause I hear only the crackling of flames and the distant sounds of morning. Birds beginning their songs, wind stirring through trees, the world waking to a new day. Now, he continues, we take the sacred flame home. This fire, blessed by sacrifice, fed by bones, purified by your offerings, This fire will sustain us through winter. Each family will carry flame from this fire to relight your hearths. The sun will rise, the new year will begin. We have survived Samhain, we have paid the price. We have honoured the dead and released our burdens. Now we return to life. Druids begin distributing torches lit from the bonfire. Each family sends a representative forward to receive flame, usually the father or eldest son, though in families without men, women perform this duty. My father approaches and receives our torch, and I watch the sacred flame pass from the communal fire to our family's keeping. This flame has been blessed by everything that occurred tonight, by sacrifice and death, by communion and transformation, by divination and offering. This flame carries within it the promise of survival, of continuity, of life persisting despite all that threatens it. We prepare to process down from the sacred hill, to return to our homes, to relight our hearths, and begin the new year. The bonfire will be left to burn itself out, tended by druids who will remain on the hill to ensure the sacred space is properly closed. As we turn to leave, the sun breaks above the eastern horizon. Its light is weak and pale. Winter approaches, but it is light nonetheless. It is the sun returning as promised, purchased by sacrifice, earned by our endurance of this terrible night. We have survived Samhain. The year is reborn, and we carry the sacred flame home. Chapter 14. The Dawn Breaking. The sun rises like a promise kept, like a debt paid, like a covenant renewed between humanity and whatever powers govern the cosmos. Its light is pale and cold. This is late autumn, nearly winter, and the sun's warmth has fled south, but it is light nonetheless. After a night of absolute darkness, of sitting in cold and fear, of witnessing horrors by firelight alone, this natural illumination feels like salvation. We stand on the sacred hill, hundreds of us, watching the sun climb above the eastern horizon. No one speaks. We are too exhausted for words, too overwhelmed by what we have witnessed and experienced. We simply watch as the sky transforms from black to grey to pink to pale blue, as stars fade and shadows retreat, as the world of daylight reasserts itself over the realm of night. I am so tired that my bones ache, that my eyes burn, that my thoughts feel sluggish and disconnected. I have been awake for more than a full day and night, have experienced more terror and wonder in those hours than in all my previous 19 years. My body wants to collapse, to sleep for days, but we are not finished yet. One final ceremony remains. The Druids stand around the bonfire, which still burns though lower now, and they begin the closing ritual. This is the moment when the sacred space must be properly sealed, when the doorways we opened must be shut, when the protections we suspended must be restored. Cathbad raises his staff, and his voice, hoarse now from a night of continuous chanting, rings out one last time. The night has passed. The veil thickens once more. The dead return to their realm. The spirits withdraw. The boundary between worlds reasserts itself. He strikes his staff against stone 3 times, and with each strike I feel something shift in the air, a tightening, a closing, a return to normal reality. The other world is receding. The liminal space we have occupied all night is collapsing back into the mundane. The sacrifices have been accepted, Cathbad continues. The offerings have been received. The year has died and been reborn. The sun rises as promised, purchased by blood and bone, earned by our endurance, given as gift from powers beyond our full comprehension. He gestures to the torches that families now hold, each one lit from the sacred bonfire. You carry the new fire. This flame is blessed, purified, consecrated. It has witnessed sacrifice and offering. It has been touched by the other world. It carries within it the promise of life continuing, of warmth enduring, of light persisting through the darkness of winter. The Druids begin to dismiss us in groups, sending families down from the hill in an orderly procession. We are to return to our homes, relight our hearths with the sacred flame, and begin the new year. But we must do so properly, with respect for what has occurred, with understanding of what has been given and what has been paid. Go now, Cathbad commands. Relight your fires, warm your homes, feed your families, rest and recover. But remember what you witnessed here tonight. Remember the price paid for your survival. Remember that the dead walk on Samhain, that boundaries can fail, that order must be maintained through constant vigilance and proper ritual. He pauses, his ancient eyes scanning the exhausted crowd. And remember this above all. We survive because we do what must be done, however terrible. We survive because we make sacrifices, both literal and metaphorical. We survive because we honor the dead, acknowledge the spirits, and pay the debts we owe to forces greater than ourselves. The year is reborn. Go and live it, until next Samhain, when the cycle begins again. With that, he strikes his staff against stone one final time, and the dismissal is complete. We begin our descent from the sacred hill, moving slowly, carefully, our torches held high to protect their flames from the morning breeze that has begun to stir. The walk down the hill feels longer than the climb up did, perhaps because we're so exhausted, perhaps because the adrenaline and fear that propelled us through the night have now drained away completely. I stumble several times, my legs weak beneath me, and my father's steadying hand keeps me upright. Around us, other families make similar careful progress down the hillside. We move in near silence, a few whispered words, occasional sounds of children crying from exhaustion, the crunch of feet on frost-covered ground. But mostly silence, as if speech requires more energy than we possess. As we descend, I look back once at the hilltop. The bonfire still burns, tended by Druids who will remain until it burns itself out completely. The Wicker man's ruins are visible as a dark smudge against the lightening sky. And for just a moment, perhaps trick of light, perhaps final touch of the thinning veil, perhaps exhaustion playing with my perception, I swear I see shapes moving around the fire. Shapes that might be the remaining Druids or might be something else, something that has not yet fully withdrawn to the other world. But then my father's hand tugs my shoulder, urging me forward, and I turn away from the hill and continue my descent toward home, and rest, and the ordinary world of daylight. The village comes into view as we round the final bend in the path. The carved turnips we placed around our homes yesterday still sit in their positions, their candles long since burned out, their grotesque faces looking foolish and powerless in daylight. What was protective and frightening by night is merely carved of vegetable by day. Other families peel off toward their own homes, each one eager to relight their hearth, to restore warmth and light to their dwelling. We continue to our roundhouse, and when we enter, the cold and darkness that filled it yesterday greets us with almost physical presence. My father moves immediately to the hearth, where yesterday's fire died in a hiss of steam and smoke. He kneels before the cold stones and positions the torch carefully. The sacred flame touches prepared kindling, dry wood and tinder arranged yesterday for exactly this purpose. And after a moment's hesitation, it catches. Fire blooms in our hearth once more. The flame spreads from the kindling to larger pieces of wood, growing, climbing, filling our home with light and the promise of warmth. It is not yet hot enough to truly warm us, but psychologically the effect is immediate. We have fire again, we have light again. The year of darkness has ended, and a new year of light has begun. My mother collapses onto the rushes covering our floor, her exhaustion finally claiming her completely. My grandmother sits by the growing fire, her ancient face catching the light, her expression peaceful despite, or perhaps because of, the knowledge that this will be her last year of life. My father tends the fire carefully, feeding it gradually, building it up properly so it will burn strong and steady. This fire must not go out. It must burn continuously until next Samhain, a full year from now. It represents continuity, life persisting, the connection between this year and the next. Ain, my sister, who had been kept mostly with the other children during the worst of the night's ceremonies, sits quietly by the fire. She looks older than she did yesterday, as if the night has aged her in ways that have nothing to do with time. She has witnessed enough to begin understanding what Samhain truly is, even if she was sheltered from the worst horrors. We sit together in silence as the fire grows, as warmth gradually returns to our home, as the morning light strengthens outside our door. We are alive, we are together, we have survived. My father finally breaks the silence. "You are a man now, Brennan," he says, looking at me across the flames. "You have witnessed what men must witness. You have endured what must be endured. You understand now what it costs to survive, what prices must be paid, what sacrifices must be made. I nod, unable to speak. The images from the night replay in my mind. The Wicker man burning, the 3 people screaming inside it, the dead walking among us, the shapeshifters transforming, the puka claiming someone, the Dullahan marking Tadag for death. All of it real, all of it witnessed, all of it now part of who I am. Does it get easier, I finally ask, knowing what must be done, watching it, participating in it? My father considers this for a long moment. No, he says finally. It never becomes easy, but it becomes bearable. You learn to carry the weight. You learn to live with what you have seen. You learn that horror and beauty can exist simultaneously, that life and death are not opposites, but partners in the dance of existence. He pokes at the fire, sending up sparks. And you learn that what we do, the rituals, the sacrifices, the honoring of the dead, all of it matters. Not because the gods demand it, though perhaps they do. Not because tradition requires it, though it does. But because these rituals connect us to something larger than ourselves, something that has sustained our people for generations beyond counting. My grandmother speaks, her voice soft but clear. The Christians will come, she says, and her words seem like prophecy. They will call our ways barbaric. They will try to transform our festivals into their own. Samhain will become something else. All Hallows Eve, they will call it. And later perhaps something else again. The human sacrifices will end. The bone fires will become mere bonfires. The communion with the dead will be sanitized into prayers for souls. She stares into the flames, and for a moment her eyes reflect firelight in ways that make her look almost supernatural herself. But the essence will remain, she continues. The acknowledgement that darkness exists, that death surrounds life, that certain nights are different, liminal, dangerous. The masks and costumes will persist. The carved vegetables with their faces will evolve but endure. The acknowledgement of the dead will continue in different forms. Why do you speak of this, my mother asks? Why do you speak of Christians and change and futures that may never come? Because I see it, my grandmother replies simply. The gift runs strong in my line. I see the world that will come, a world that will pretend this night never happened, that will turn what we did into entertainment and sweetness. But underneath the pretending, the truth will persist. The truth always persists. We fall silent again, each lost in our own thoughts. Outside, the village is slowly coming to life as other families complete their own homecomings, relight their own hearths, begin the process of recovery from the ordeal of Samhain night. My mother eventually rises and begins preparing food. Cold food, since the fire is not yet hot enough for cooking, but food nonetheless. We need to eat, to restore our bodies after the long fast of Samhain night. She brings out bread and dried meat, apples from our store, weak ale that tastes like nectar after hours of thirst. We eat in silence, too tired for conversation, but the act of eating together, of sharing food by the fire, feels sacred in its own way. We are alive, we are fed, we are warm, we are together. After what we witnessed last night, these simple facts feel like miracles. As the morning progresses toward midday, the exhaustion becomes overwhelming. My father announces that we will sleep, that the world can wait, that there are no tasks so urgent they cannot be postponed while we recover. I make my way to my sleeping area, a corner of the roundhouse with furs and blankets piled to create a crude bed. I collapse onto it without even removing my boots, and sleep claims me immediately. My dreams are troubled, filled with fire and screaming, with the dead reaching for me, with shapes transforming and boundaries failing. But even troubled sleep is better than no sleep, and my body desperately needs rest. I wake as afternoon fades toward evening, disoriented and confused, my body aching in every joint and muscle. The fire still burns in the hearth, tended by my father, who apparently slept less than the rest of us. My mother and grandmother are also awake, preparing an evening meal, the smell of cooking food filling our home with normalcy. You slept half the day, my father tells me. Good. You needed it. I sit up slowly, my body protesting every movement. Did I dream it, I ask, or did it really happen? It happened, my father confirms. All of it. Every horror, every wonder. It happened and you survived it, and now you carry the memory of it for the rest of your life. I nod slowly, accepting this. The memories are too vivid, too detailed, too terrible to be mere dreams. I witnessed Samhain. I witnessed Halloween's birth, the real Halloween, stripped of all later sanitization and commercialization. I witnessed the ancient festival in its full power and horror. That night, we eat our first hot meal in 2 days, and it is glorious. Simple porridge and meat, but it tastes like a feast. We eat by firelight, speaking little, just being together, grateful for warmth and food and each other. Over the following days, life slowly returns to normal. The cattle calm, the crows disperse, the sense of wrongness that pervaded everything before Samhain fades away. The veil has thickened again. The worlds are separate once more. The other world and its inhabitants have withdrawn. But we are not unchanged. How could we be? We carry Samhain within us now, carry the knowledge of what we witnessed, carry the weight of what was done in our name and with our participation. Tadhg, the man marked by the Dullahan, dies 3 days after Samhain. He simply does not wake one morning, his heart having stopped in his sleep. A peaceful death, all things considered, but still a death predicted and inevitable. The woman who saw the skull in the mirror, Maeve, the blacksmith's daughter, remains dead. Her funeral is held, her body returned to the earth, her family grieving but accepting. She saw what she should not have seen, and it killed her. The man taken by the puka returns after a week. But my grandmother was right. He is not the same. His hair is white, though he was barely 30. His eyes are haunted. He rarely speaks, and when he does, his words often make no sense, referencing places and things that do not exist in our world. He has been touched by the other world, and the touch has marked him permanently. Winter comes, harsh as the Druids predicted. The cold is bitter, the snow deep, the darkness long, but we survive, huddled around our hearths, sustained by the fire blessed on Samhain night, living through the season that kills the weak and the unprepared. And I am different. I am harder now, older in ways that have nothing to do with time. I have witnessed sacrifice and death and the walking of the dead. I've seen boundaries fail and worlds merge. I've learned that the universe is stranger and more terrible than daylight allows us to believe. But I have also learned that we endure, that humans survive impossible things through ritual and community, and the courage to face horrors we cannot fully understand. That there is power in acknowledging darkness rather than pretending it does not exist. I am Brennan of the Aren tribe, and I lived through Samhain. I witnessed Halloween's bloody birth, and I will carry that knowledge, that experience, that transformation with me, until my own death returns me to the other world I glimpsed that night. The sun has risen as promised. The year is reborn, and we live on, carrying the memory of that dark and terrible night when we paid the price that keeps the cosmos turning, when we honored the dead and survived their walking, when we transformed ourselves and endured transformation. This is Samhain. This is Halloween's truth, and now you know it too. Chapter 15. The morning after and the legacy, 3 days after Samhain. I wake to frost covering the world outside our roundhouse. The cold has deepened, and the cattle's breath mists in the morning air as my father and I tend to them. Life has returned to its rhythms, but nothing feels quite the same. How could it? We work in silence, father and son, shoveling feed, checking for illness, ensuring the animals survived the ordeal of Samhain as we did. The cattle are calmer now, no longer rolling their eyes in terror, no longer sensing the thinning veil and the things that walked beyond it. The veil has thickened. The worlds are separate again. We are safe as mortals can ever be in a universe where death waits patient and inevitable. As we work, my father speaks. This is what we do, he says, not looking at me, his hands continuing their practiced movements. We face the darkness each year. We make the sacrifices. We honor the dead. We perform the rituals that our ancestors performed, that their ancestors performed before them, stretching back to times beyond memory. He pauses to wipe sweat from his brow despite the cold. You asked if it gets easier. It does not. But it becomes part of you. The horror becomes integrated into your understanding of the world. You learn to live with it because you must, because there is no alternative except madness or denial, and both of those are forms of death. I nod, understanding what he means. The images from Samhain night are still vivid in my mind. The Wicker man burning, the screaming, the dead walking, all of it. But the raw, overwhelming terror has begun to settle into something more manageable. memory rather than immediate experience, part of my history rather than my present. Will you tell your children, my father asks, when you have them, when they grow old enough? Will you tell them what Samhain truly is? Yes, I answer without hesitation. They must know. They must be prepared. To shelter them from the truth would be to fail them when they need to face it themselves. My father nods approval. Good. This is how the knowledge passes. This is how we maintain the traditions. Each generation teaches the next, prepares them as best we can, acknowledges that some lessons can only be learned through direct experience, but that preparation makes the experience survivable. We finish with the cattle and return to our roundhouse. My grandmother sits by the fire. She sits there most of the time now, conserving her strength, accepting that her time is short. She has been teaching my mother and sister the family's accumulated wisdom, passing on recipes and remedies and stories that might otherwise die with her. "Come, boy," she calls when she sees me. "Sit with me. I have things to tell you while I still can." I sit beside her, and my mother and sister draw close as well. My father settles nearby. We're all present for what my grandmother needs to say. "I dreamed last night," she begins. Strong dreams, true dreams, the kind that come when one foot is in this world and the other is already in the other world. Her eyes are distant, seeing things we cannot. "I dreamed of times to come, of changes that will sweep through our land like fire through dry grass." She focuses on me, her ancient eyes sharp despite her age. "You will live to see the Christians come, Brennan. They're already in the southern lands, spreading their religion, building their churches, condemning our ways as barbaric and pagan. Will they stop Samhain?" my mother asks, fear in her voice. "They will try," my grandmother replies, "and in some ways they will succeed. The human sacrifices will end. They will call it murder and forbid it. The open communion with the dead will be transformed into prayers for souls in their purgatory. The shape-shifting will be condemned as demon worship. They will try to erase our ways, to replace them with their own festivals." She pauses, gathering her thoughts. "But they will not completely succeed. Because the truth of Samhain, the acknowledgement that darkness exists, that death surrounds life, that certain times are liminal and dangerous, this truth is too deep to be completely erased. So they will compromise. They will create a festival called All Hallows' Eve, placing it at the same time as Samhain, trying to Christianize what they cannot eliminate. And the traditions? My sister asks. The traditions will evolve but persist, my grandmother says with certainty. The bonfires will become simple bonfires, their sacred significance forgotten, but the fires still lit. The guising will continue. People will still disguise themselves, still wear masks and costumes, though they will no longer remember that they do so to confuse malevolent spirits. The carved turnips will persist, and in distant lands where turnips do not grow, they will use other vegetables, pumpkins perhaps. She looks directly at me now. Centuries from now, in lands you cannot imagine, children will dress in costumes and go from house to house demanding treats. They will carve vegetables into faces and light them from within. They will tell ghost stories and celebrate what they call Halloween, and they will have no idea, none at all, that what they do echoes the night you lived through. They will think it is all just fun, just entertainment, just playful pretend. But it is not, I say quietly. No, my grandmother confirms, it is not. Beneath the sanitization, beneath the pretending, beneath the transformation into commercial entertainment, beneath all of that the truth persists. Halloween is Samhain. It is the night when we acknowledge that darkness exists, that death claims us all, that forces beyond our control shape our existence. It is the night we stopped pretending that life is safe and predictable, and instead confronted the terrifying uncertainty of existence itself. She coughs, her body shaking with the effort, and my mother helps her drink water. When she recovers, she continues, "The people of those future times will think they have moved beyond superstition, beyond primitive beliefs. They will laugh at the idea that the dead actually walk on Halloween, that spirits roam, that boundaries thin. They will explain everything through psychology and sociology and rational frameworks." But will they be right? I ask. My grandmother smiles, a knowing smile that carries secrets. They will be partially right. Much of what we believe is symbol and metaphor, ways of understanding and coping with forces we cannot fully comprehend. The gods may not be literal beings demanding blood sacrifice. The dead may not literally walk among us, she pauses significantly. Or perhaps they do. Perhaps the veil really does thin. Perhaps the boundaries really do fail. Perhaps our ancestors understood something that future generations will forget in their rush to explain everything away. The truth, the real truth, is probably somewhere between pure literal belief and pure rational explanation. What matters, she continues, is not whether the spirits are literally real, but that we acknowledge what they represent. Death, loss, fear, the unknown, the uncontrollable. By creating rituals around these forces, by acknowledging them rather than denying them, by facing them collectively rather than individually, we make them bearable, we survive them. She looks at each of us in turn. This is what you must pass on. Not necessarily belief in literal spirits and gods. Belief will evolve as humanity evolves. But the understanding that darkness must be acknowledged, that death must be faced, that certain nights are different and should be treated as such. The understanding that humans need rituals to help them cope with the terrifying aspects of existence. Days pass into weeks. The predictions made during the divination ceremony begin to come true with disturbing accuracy. Raiders do come from the east as foretold, though we repel them because we were warned and prepared. 3 people do die before spring. Tadag, who is marked by the Dullahan, an old woman who succumbs to winter cold, and a young warrior killed in the raid, fulfilling the prophecy exactly. A child is born in midwinter with eyes that seem to see too much, that track things invisible to others. The family brings the child to the Druids, who confirm that the sight has been born into this one, that they will grow to see what others cannot, to walk between worlds, blessing and burden, as the prophecy said. My grandmother's health declines through winter, but she does not seem distressed by this. She has made her peace. She has passed on her knowledge. She has prepared us for her departure. When spring arrives, the first green shoots pushing through melting snow, the first warmth returning to the sun, she passes quietly in her sleep, a smile on her ancient face, as if she has gone willingly to meet what awaits beyond. We grieve, but we also celebrate. She lived her full measure of years. She taught us well. She died peacefully, not in agony or terror. And she believed, truly believed, that she was simply returning to the earth, that her essence would join the ancestors, that she would walk again on future Samhains among the honoured dead. Her funeral is held according to tradition. Her body is returned to the earth. And on the next Samhain, when we gather once more on that sacred hill, when the bone fire burns and the dead walk, I swear I see her among them, a shimmer, a presence, a familiar face glimpsed in the firelight. Whether it is truly her or simply my need to believe she persists, I cannot say. But I speak to her, thank her for her teaching, tell her she is remembered. Years pass. I marry, have children of my own. I tell them stories of their great-grandmother, of the wisdom she passed on, of the prophecies she spoke, and when they are old enough, I begin to prepare them for Samhain, to explain what they will witness, to help them understand why we do what we do. My own children grow strong and healthy, though always I worry about the dangers that claim young lives, disease, accident, the 1,000 misfortunes that can befall the vulnerable. But they survive childhood, and each Samhain they understand more, see more clearly what the festival truly means. The prophecy about transformation, that my path would diverge into many possibilities, proves true in ways I could not have anticipated. I become a respected member of the tribe, not through conventional means, but through the wisdom I gained that first Samhain, through my willingness to face darkness and acknowledge it rather than deny it. People come to me for counsel, recognizing that I understand something essential about existence that others miss. More years pass, decades. I grow old, my hair going grey, my body losing the strength of youth. I have lived through perhaps 40 Samhains by now, have witnessed the sacrifices and the dead walking and all the rest dozens of times. And my grandmother was right. It never becomes easy, but it becomes bearable. It becomes part of the rhythm of existence, the acknowledgement that darkness and light are partners in the dance of life. I tell my grandchildren stories now, as my grandmother told them to me. I prepare them for what they must face, knowing that preparation can only do so much, that some lessons must be learned through direct experience, but I give them context, framework, understanding that will help them survive the horror when it comes. And I tell them what my grandmother told me, that Samhain will change, that the traditions will evolve, that future generations will celebrate Halloween without understanding its origins, but that beneath the changes the essence will remain. When you see children dressed as ghosts and monsters, I tell them, know that they are echoing what we do here, even if they do not understand it. When you see carved vegetables lit from within, know that we lit them first, for protection and guidance. When you see people telling scary stories on autumn nights, know that we told them first, to prepare ourselves for what walks when boundaries thin. The world changes, I continue, that traditions evolve. What was once literal becomes symbolic. What was once sacred becomes entertainment. But the human need that created Samhain, the need to acknowledge darkness, to face death, to mark the changing seasons, that need never disappears. So Halloween persists, in whatever form each age requires. I am old now, telling this to my grandchildren, trying to make them understand where their customs come from, why they do what they do. They listen with wide eyes, half believing, half dismissing it as old tales from a superstitious time. But when Samhain comes, when darkness falls and the veil grows thin, they remember. They feel it. The presence of the dead, the opening to the other world, the ancient fear and ancient power. This is what I lived through all those years ago. This is what we all lived through every year, generation after generation, and this is what persists, however transformed, however sanitized. In the Halloween celebrations that continue long after our particular tribe, our particular ways, have been forgotten. The Christians do come, as my grandmother predicted. They build their churches and preach their gospel and condemn our ways. The human sacrifices end. The last Wicker man burns perhaps 50 years after my first Samhain. The Druids lose their power, are suppressed or converted. The old religion fades, but Samhain does not die. It transforms, as my grandmother said it would. It becomes All Hallows Eve, Christianized but recognizable. The bone fires become bonfires. The guising continues. The honoring of the dead persists, though in different forms. The acknowledgement that this night is different, special, liminal. That acknowledgement survives, and thousands of years from now, in lands our people never imagined. Children will dress in costumes and go from house to house. They will carve pumpkins into faces and light them from within. They will tell ghost stories and watch horror films and celebrate Halloween with candy and parties. And they will have no idea, absolutely none, that what they do echoes the night I lived through as a young man of 19 winters, when I watched 3 people burn in a wicker man, when I saw the dead walk among us, when I witnessed Halloween being born in blood and bonfire smoke. But you know now. You have walked that night with me. You have smelled the burning flesh, heard the screaming, felt the presence of the dead. You have witnessed Samhain, the real Halloween, stripped of all sanitization and commercial sweetness. This is the truth that persists beneath every jack-o'-lantern, beneath every costume, beneath every Halloween celebration. This is the darkness we acknowledged, the death we faced, the boundaries we watched dissolve and reform. This is what I lived through. This is what we all live through every year, generation after generation. And this is what you inherit, whether you know it or not, when you celebrate Halloween. The echo of screams from a burning wicker man, the memory of dead returning, the ancient acknowledgement that some nights belong not to the living but to forces older and darker than we can fully comprehend. I am Brennan of the Erin tribe. I lived through Samhain in ancient Celtic Ireland. I witnessed Halloween's bloody birth, and now I am old, ready to return myself to the earth, to become one of the dead who will walk on future Samhains, to take my place among the ancestors who have gone before. The fire burns in our hearth, descended from that bonfire lit so long ago, carrying within it the memory of sacrifice and offering. The sun rises each morning because we paid the price. The seasons turn because we maintained the balance. Life continues because we faced darkness and survived. This is Samhain. This is Halloween. This is the truth we carried so that you might live, even if you have forgotten why, even if you no longer understand what your celebrations truly mean. Remember us. Remember what we did. Remember that Halloween is not mere entertainment, but the echo of the night when humanity faced the darkness and refused to be consumed by it. The veil thins, the dead walk, and we endure generation after generation carrying the knowledge that some truths are too important to die. no matter how the world changes around them. This is what you lived through with me tonight. This is Halloween's bloody birth. And now you carry it too. The knowledge, the horror, the understanding that beneath the candy and costumes lies a truth about human existence that can never be fully erased. Sleep well if you can. And when Halloween comes, when you see children in their costumes and carved pumpkins glowing in the darkness, remember the screaming. Remember the bonfire. Remember that what seems like play and pretend is actually the echo of something profound and terrible and necessary. Remember Samhain. Remember Halloween's bloody birth. Remember that we paid the price so you could celebrate in safety, even if you no longer understand what you're celebrating or why. The fire burns low, the story is told, and I am ready to rest, to join the ancestors, to become one more presence walking on Samhain night, watching the living as they honor the dead, as they maintain the traditions, as they keep the memory alive even if they no longer understand its full significance. This is what I lived through. This is what you have lived through with me, and this is what persists forever and always in the dark heart of Halloween.